Joshi sir and Maithili ma'am, shall we start? It's 3 now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 150 participants have joined and more are coming in.
That's fine. So I think we should start.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. Tashildar, over to you, please.
I welcome one and all to the 5th day of our 1-week faculty development program on module on curriculum design and pedagogy for autonomous colleges. After 4 successful days of fruitful interactions and deliberations with the expert faculty, we are in the 5th day. Today, we have 3 experts with us. We may begin with the very first session, which would be conducted by Professor Maithili Ramchand ma'am. Now I request Dr. Sandeep Arote sir, member IQSC, Sangamner College, Sangamner, to introduce the resource person for session 1. Thank you.
Sir, if you don't mind, since I have already been introduced, is it okay if I begin the session?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Since there has already been one round of introduction, I thought we will save on that time.
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will just quote one sentence here.
Okay, sure, sir.
So it's a great pleasure for all of us. Professor Maithili Ramchand ma'am is here to talk to us about the pedagogy and inclusion. This is a topic for today's session. And as we all know, I just want to quote one sentence that ma'am has a very active role in designing and implementation of this particular FDP. And as we see, all the tasks which we are performing day to day, the basic idea is originated from her only. So I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of IQSC Sangamner College, TISS and RUSA for this today's session. And now you may start your presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. It was a collective effort, sir, you know that. It's indeed my pleasure to be interacting with you again today. And I have been keeping in touch with the organizers and Professor Sybil. And I can see that the participation has been fantastic. So the pleasure is all mine. Thank you all for giving us this opportunity of interacting with you and getting to learn quite a bit from all of you. So today's session, as has already been announced, will be conducted by 3 of us. So basically, if we can move on to the next session, there are 3 sections to it. The first section is on socially just pedagogies, which I will be briefly talking about. The next section is on underrepresented groups. Largely, we are focusing on the issue of gender, which Professor Sugra will be doing. And on the disabilities, persons with disabilities as the second underrepresented group, which Dr. Varsha Ghattu will be taking up. And again, Dr. Varsha Ghattu will be talking briefly about UDL principles. So this is largely the plan for today's class. Moving on, in my brief session for about half an hour next, basically we will be looking at issues of social justice. Many of you may be quite aware of theoretical propositions on social justice, since you're all from different disciplines, and it will be really nice to hear your views and conceptual perspectives on aspects of social justice. and a very interlinked idea of democracy and institutions and democratic spaces, and of course, inclusion. So moving on to understanding social justice. Essentially, as you're aware, there are quite a few theoretical conceptions on social justice, which arises from a rights-based perspective, which arises from inclusion and feminist perspectives. And increasingly, there is a lot of empirical research that is coming up around social justice. So some of them are lab-based research. There are quite a few surveys. So if you look at, for example, the Journal of Education for Social Justice, you find that many surveys are conducted, especially in the sector that I am involved in, teacher education. Surveys on, for example, the student teachers who are undergoing the B.Ed program. What is their idea of social justice? And how much has program managed to impact student teachers' understanding of social justice? So there are some robust surveys that are available both globally as well as in the context of India. And of course, interviews which offer a more in-depth view about the complexity of the conception itself. And basically, it also brings to fore the tensions that revolve around this aspect of social justice. So specific to social justice and higher education, broadly, the next slide, please, sir. Yeah, thank you. So we have this ideas of redistribution and recognition principles drawing from the liberal philosophical understandings. Mainly, it is John Rawls' idea about the aspect of redistribution that we are operating with currently. Can maybe have examples of this aspect of redistribution principle in higher education? Redistribution essentially involves what the word suggests, redistributing available resources. So it is more socially just. Any examples for redistribution? Am I audible? Because knowing this group, I know you're all very active. So is it that you're still, okay. Is it that you're all still settling in and would like some more time before you respond? Okay, so maybe reflect on some of the practices in the higher education sector initiated by the state. By state, I mean the government, be it the central government or the state government, which specifically targets the underrepresented and the underprivileged sections of this society. What are some of the targeted programs that we have in higher education? I'm sure even autonomous colleges have to follow the UGC regulations for reservation, isn't it? That's right, yes. RTE actually applies more to the school education sector. So it has made school education compulsory for children between 6 to 14 years of age. That's right. Scholarship is another aspect. That's right. A very important component is not just providing access in terms of admission, but also ensuring the buildings are accessible for persons with disabilities. So that is also one of the norms. Ms. Saha, would you like to elaborate on what you mean by this question about underprivileged, definition of underprivileged, and is it inclusive?
Saha madam, you can unmute and interact with Maithili madam. Yes.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, madam. When we say underprivileged, so do you mean by birth or whether the economic condition of a family, or what is it inclusive of? What do you include in underprivileged? That was my question.
That's indeed a very important question, because the term underprivileged can mean different things to different people. So let's have your suggestions on your own conceptions of underprivileged. NEP 2020, in fact, has also defined this category of underprivileged and underrepresented. Absolutely. So there are a range of intervention programs that you have all listed. And these essentially emerge from this principle of redistribution, basically considering that education is a human right, and therefore every member of the society should have equal opportunities. So whether, unlike school education, which is compulsory, higher education is not compulsory. But if a individual wishes to pursue higher education, opportunities must not be curtailed for their individual for any reason. And that's the precisely why all these programs and interventions are provided. Yes, so coming back to the idea of underprivileged, what causes this aspect of underprivileged? And why do we say certain sections of the society are underrepresented in the higher education system? What causes their underrepresentation, one? And two, whom do we consider as underprivileged, and why are they underprivileged indeed? Yes, one is certainly gender inequality. Yes, socioeconomic reasons. So largely poverty is causes many different kinds of underprivilegedness. So what do we mean by those who suffer a lot? What causes suffering? Caste, certainly. Yes, location also in terms of rurality. So one of you mentioned suffering. What causes suffering? Absolutely. Yes, I was just waiting. How come disabilities did not? It's not just physical, it's also any other kinds of disabilities. Absolutely, yes. So is it fair to say that these groups in some form or the other have been traditionally and historically discriminated against, and therefore they are underrepresented in higher education sector now? Would it be a fair statement to make? Absolutely, yes. So what causes this aspect of disprivilege or underprivilege is a combination of social, cultural, economic, historical. So there are many different layers to it. And some of you have mentioned family as well. Indeed. So family forms a microcosm and then the larger society. So there are different causes essentially. So this is not something that I need to tell you. You are all pretty well aware of it. The reason why I went into this aspect is basically for us to reflect on some of the specific intervention programs that the Indian state has put in place to ensure that there is some amount of redistribution of available resources so that opportunity are created, and those who have been traditionally underprivileged and underrepresented, and additional compensatory measures are provided for them, so they are able to compete for the limited seats in higher education. So that is the broadly the principle behind the aspect of redistribution emerging from Rawlsian thinking. Then there is also this aspect of recognition, which says that it is not sufficient. So these are largely, these arguments have emerged from multiculturalists who say that it is not sufficient if you only look at an individual and then think about redistribution of resources as far as the individual is concerned. So for the multiculturalist, it is equally important that the recognition principle is also invoked, because individuals are, after all, part of members of a society, and the identity formation of an individual is essentially through a community or a group affiliation is what creates identity. Then a third component is generally added currently, and this is thanks to the social justice theorist Nancy Fraser, who said representation is equally important. So it is not enough if you just recognize that an individual gains identity in the context of a community. It is equally important that the community voices are heard, and adequate representation is made when we come up with these intervention programs or specific targeted support that is provided for groups that we feel are underrepresented. So some of the legislations, one of you mentioned RTE, which is basically for school education, but we do have the Rights of Persons with Disability Act in 2016, which ensures that higher education institutions also become inclusive, both in terms of providing access, but also proactively in terms of how they teach the curriculum and how they assess students. So my colleague, Dr. Varsha Ghattu, will be talking more about that. So essentially, there are these policies, legislations in the country, but by and large, pedagogy is a dimension where faculty can directly take agency for social justice. And of course, we have to remember that pedagogy is only one aspect of this multi-dimensional component of social justice, and just pedagogy alone is not sufficient to bring a more socially just society. Again, this is something that I don't have to tell you, but it's important that we do stress this aspect of the structural imbalance as well. So moving on, specific to the socially just pedagogies. So some of it that has emerged now, and considerable amount of empirical research exists in terms of how these shape students' experience within programs that have socially just pedagogies. But also there are a few longitudinal studies that has been able to measure aspects of, no, measure is not the right word, to gauge the impact of the pedagogy in a long-term prospect as well, even after students have gained employment. So essentially, there are two aspects to socially just pedagogies. One, of course, is to bring about social change. That is the core objective. And the other also to ensure that socially just pedagogies are inclusive of different knowledge systems and experiences. So I think some of this you must have discussed in the previous two sessions as well. And essentially, the principles of teaching and the conditions of learning that we utilize, we operate with in terms of how we design the curriculum and how we make sense of the curriculum and teach our courses, individual courses in classrooms, is largely linked to our own epistemic understanding of the discipline, our epistemic understanding of our learners, and certainly the ontological positionings in terms of how do we view the learners, what are the outcomes that we visualize in terms of what is it that we want for our learners as a result of undergoing our course. So I understand that you've all been quite eager to do this mapping exercise of program outcomes, course outcomes. So we'll come to that in a bit, and we hope to have a small task towards the end of this day. So moving on, basically the reading that I had shared with you engages with three aspects of socially just pedagogies through a review of literature. May we have the next slide, please? So one important component is the relationship between social justice and active learning. And by active learning, it's not only cognitively active, but also emotionally involving students as well. And crucially, because our students in the higher education space are adults, we need to recognize them as socially responsible citizens. The second aspect that this paper provides us is that social justice, socially just pedagogies are essentially a coherent set of practices. So it's not possible for just one faculty to bring in socially just pedagogy within her course alone. It has to be at the programmatic level. So it's only then that socially just pedagogies have some meaning in the students' lives. And the third component is the aspect of critical pedagogy as a necessity to infuse social justice within the classroom. We'll very briefly discuss about critical pedagogy shortly. So I'll pause here, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Ma'am, do you want me to read out those questions which are there in the chat box?
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess there are most of the answers to what you have been interacting throughout the session.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I have been reading them. Yes.
Yeah, actually. So I would request if participants, Dr. Usha Mukundan, madam, she wants to ask, can you please cite one or two examples of critical pedagogy?
There are quite a few examples of critical pedagogy in my own sector of teacher education, but more broadly, a very a well-known example in adult literacy is, of course, Paulo Freire's attempt with the illiterate farmers in Brazil. Certainly, yes, critical pedagogy is a sensitive issue precisely because inclusion is not something that we will be able to bring in at a superficial level, isn't it? So if we do care for inclusion and if we are concerned about social justice, of course, we need to address hard questions. And again, it's a matter of how do we engage with our students as adults, and how is it that we are able to defuse situations of tensions in the classrooms, essentially, and how are we able to create that kind of an atmosphere where ideas are discussed freely, and in case of differences of opinion, how is it that we are able to, both as faculty who are facilitating these kinds of discussions, but also more importantly, between the relationships among students, how is it that we are able to generate the level of trust and bring in the atmosphere of debate. I know these are hard things and not easy, but I feel we must make a start somewhere if we are concerned about inclusion. And you're absolutely right, madam. Judgment is something that is very important, especially for a faculty. So she should be able to judge at what stage to bring in, say, a controversial issue. And she should be able to judge when to steer a discussion, if it is getting too heated or if it is getting into a position where it is going to obviously hurt one particular group.
Yeah, continuing the same, Dr. Moitrey Saha, she is kind of asking, is not critical pedagogy a very sensitive issue? And yes, you have already commented much on that. Dr. Michelle Philip, she is asking, how can we ensure just measurement of progress in achieving social justice?
Yes, so this is again a very important question. I'm afraid there are no easy answers for this, because by its very nature, socially just pedagogy is something that has to evolve within the context of a particular classroom. And the aspect of measurement, again, is something that is very fluid and rather difficult to arrive at. But then again, in teacher education, as I told you, some progress has been made with respect to socially just pedagogies, and there have been attempts to identify competences that would lend themselves to be identified as a socially just teacher. And essentially, in a teacher education program that claims itself to be socially just, those competencies are invoked as outcomes for the program. So one of the key elements, moving on, for socially just pedagogies to take root in an education system is, of course, the democratic principles for institutions. Maybe have the next slide, please. Yeah, I'm sorry about this, that I'm not sharing my screen myself. Am I not audible? Is there a connectivity issue from my side?
You are very much audible. Probably, I guess your range seems quite good. and everything here seems to be all right. Probably that can be individual issues, maybe. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay, so I'm not shared this section with you, but for those of you who are interested, Amy Gutman has written a very clear and concise book on democracy and education. And there is a section on higher education where she talks about the specific aspects of democracy and in a higher education institution. And one of the chapters in that section is also discussing aspects about academic freedom. So Gutman makes the point that academic freedom is, of course, essential within a democracy, but it's equally essential that the state has a role also in terms of regulations for the larger public good. So all these aspects that we talked about in terms of reservation, intervention, etc., it's only because the state insists on these norms and standards to be followed. So believe me, if I have to, accept this aspect of the two-way aspect of academic freedom, yes, for a faculty in a higher education institution and for institutions themselves, but at the same time also be willing to subject ourselves to public scrutiny and also subject ourselves to certain sets of norms is essential for a healthy, vibrant system of higher education institution. The reason I'm saying is I've just been through, actually not yet through, I'm going through the process of inspection from NCT that's going on in our institution right now, because we have applied for a new program, and to tell you the least, it's excruciatingly irritable. But then we still believe that for the larger public group, public good, especially in a sector like teacher education, which is highly beleaguered, some kind of a regulatory authority is useful. But Gutman also makes a second point that universities are more likely to serve societies, not just pandering to the market requirements. Yes, we have to get our students ready to the market, otherwise we will not be able to justify our existence at all. But it is equally important that universities also evolve as places where there are more non-quantifiable values, as Gutman puts it, basically of intellectual excellence and integrity. And that is supported by the moral principles of non-repression and non-discrimination, which are both essential for inclusive societies. So some of the democratic principles for institutions that Amy Gutman talks about are the next slide, please. What we were just discussing a little a while ago when we were talking about the sensitivity of critical pedagogy itself. Basically, in a democratic society, one of the prominent moral requirement is to be able to think carefully and rationalize your thoughts, but also equally to give space for others to think. And if there is a disagreement, there should be opportunities and space for people to defend their arguments with each other. Which unfortunately now, especially these the TV debates have shown clearly that there is increasingly lesser opportunities for a young to be exposed to these kinds of debates and articulation of each other's ideas and values. So some of the shifts that are required in the higher education space putting these arguments together, is to conceive one of our learners not as a consumer of knowledge, but one who is able to produce knowledge. And that is when higher education space can thrive. And teachers, again, as co-producers of policies and these norms that we were talking about, rather than objects of reform, that is largely the case. And critical pedagogy we've already discussed. And a third aspect that is found to be useful in higher education is, of course, the andragogy principles, which essentially reminds us that our students are adults, and therefore we should be able to provide them with the kind of support that adult learners require. So some of the principles of andragogy is that as adults, our students need to be involved in the planning and evaluation of their instruction. So it always helps to share the course objectives with them and get their suggestions as well, including their experience in the kinds of learning opportunities that we design for them. And the third aspect is that of relevance for any learner. It's not just the adult learner, but also for children, or it's equally true. That unless it is relevant to their lives, either their personal life or their, in the case of adults, the job requirement, then they're going to lose interest very soon. And the fourth aspect is that of problem-centeredness rather than content-oriented. And that is why the NEP is also now focusing on multidisciplinarity. So as we saw in the previous class, not previous class, in Professor Sarangpani's session, we saw that multidisciplinarity lends itself to thinking through problems and being able to come up with develop courses which attempt to address a problem through a multidisciplinary offering. But there are critiques of andragogy, and some of the critiques of andragogy includes the lack of clarity and precision in the theoretical formulation. And quite a few people, scholars in the higher education sector, who are involved in studying the pedagogy of higher education sector, point out that it is rather it is prescriptive, and that philosophically it does not have a sound basis. So again, I will pause here and take a few questions. We have about 5 more minutes before I end my session. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. If the participants have any questions, yes. Professor Kiran Bharti, is academic freedom and CBCS same?
So CBCS again was one attempt made to loosen the tight structure that had come into play in our higher education systems. So that was a way of offering choice for students to choose a few courses. So certain number of credits were set aside for choosing courses of students' choice. And they were expected to be from disciplines other than what the students are specializing. So no, by no means of imagination can we say that it offers freedom for students.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Participants, if you all have any other questions, Maithili ma'am would be happy to answer. You can type your questions in the chat box.
Actually, I can't unmute myself. From this college.
Okay.
But NAC and all quality test quantify probability. This is creativity.
Yeah. Dr. Ishita Ghoshal from Ferguson College, Pune, she's asking, would you say that in order for andragogy to be successful, the students need to be equally responsible and active?
Absolutely. I mean, for any program to be successful, we want our students to be active. But sometimes it can become a chicken and egg kind of a problem. So we expect students to be interested and actively participate. But then sometimes again, a course and the way a faculty is able to offer the course also generates interest. So it's a two-way process, essentially, is how I view it. But again, these are not very easy. There are no easy answers to this. So very quickly, yeah.
We think of marginalization in terms of socioeconomic conditions, but many times, in case of semi-urban and rural areas, language itself becomes a tool for marginalization, especially English. English is the language of empowerment. And we see that many of the masses, especially students belonging to these areas, are deprived of this particular, what we call language as a weapon. So how do you look at this particular issue in terms of inclusive education?
Absolutely, sir. Language, in fact, yes, I was surprised that that didn't come up as one of the areas of marginalization and a cause for underrepresentation, severe cause, in fact. So again, see, language has become a very political issue in our country, unfortunately. Again, pedagogically speaking, there are no easy answers. But for example, in an institution like TISS, we do try to provide support, although our medium of instruction, not instruction, the medium of study it is, and the medium in which they write their assessment is English. Instructionally, we try to accommodate as many languages as possible. So what we find is students themselves are good resources. So in any given class, for any course in our institute, for example, there are representations of at least a dozen languages. And we essentially get students themselves to support each other linguistically. But these are ad hoc measures. You're absolutely right. We really have to rethink this aspect of language considerably if we are to even begin to imagine social justice. Absolutely. A communication skill, for that matter, in any language is important. And because of this association of higher education and employment largely with English, unfortunately, we are undermining the confidence of students who are not proficient in English.
Thank you, ma'am. There's this question. I'm sorry, you wanted to continue, yeah.
No, go ahead. We'll take this one last question before I wind up. I have still 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Srinivas Bhong from the host college is asking whether John Rawls' theory is applicable or proper for Indian education system and Indian society per se.
So rather than think of it as applicability, the reason why I invoked Rawls in the first place was to help us reflect. So some of the practices that we have currently in the higher education system draws from certain theoretical conceptualizations and understanding. It was in that context that I brought that in. And certainly, I think it is time that we started questioning these theoretical assumptions and conceptual understandings that we bring in with respect to social justice. And it is definitely time that we started coming up with a more contemporary Indian perspective. And a lot of work has been done in India. For example, in our own institute, many of you will be aware that Professor M.S. Gore way back in the 70s had come up with pretty insightful sociological studies into learning and aspects of marginalization that learners undergo. So in the field of sociology of education, I think Professor Sugra will be able to contribute much more to this. Quite a lot of understanding, robust understanding has emerged in the Indian context as well. But it is time that we started trying to build a more holistic understanding from these very specific niche areas of, say, Dalit studies or gender studies, etc., and create a more robust, inclusive theory. Absolutely right, Professor Amrityas, and from the developmental studies perspective, has also come up with a robust theory of capability approach, for example. All right, so in the next, I've already exceeded my time. All right, this is just the last slide, broadly about the principles of critical pedagogy, which we have been now, it's more of a summary of what we have been discussing so far. Student-centeredness, then classes, democratic public spheres. It has to be dialogical. So it's only through dialogues and discussions that we can resolve tensions and deepen understanding in our classrooms. And critical pedagogy certainly has emancipatory role to play. And emancipatory potential, and it's aimed at social transformation. So thank you all very much. I look forward to continuing to listen to you through these, the remaining 2 sessions. And towards the end, we'll come back to this activity of mapping objectives and assessment based on revised Bloom's taxonomy and some of the discussions that we've had so far. And I have a very small example from education studies to show you for the mapping of course objectives and the objectives of the unit and assessment. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Here, it was indeed a very delightful session in all terms. We are enriched with the content related to inclusiveness, and whatever some of the questions were raised related to representation of marginalized classes in higher education system. I think we can proceed on with the help of these inputs from such stakeholders. Our next session begins with the next resource person. Here, now I request Mr. M.R. Boye, member IQAC of Post College, to introduce us to the resource person of session 2, day 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. And it's my great pleasure for me. Great pleasure for me to introduce the resource person for today's second session, Dr. Sugara Chunawala, who is a professor and dean at the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, that is HBCSE, which is a national center of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. She has done her BA from Bombay University in psychology in the year 1983. Further, she has done her MA
in Tata Institute of Social Science in medical and psychiatric social work in 1985. Further, she has carried out her PhD work at HBCSC at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in science education in the Faculty of Physics in the year 1992 under the University of Pune. Her research interests include gender issues in education, design and technology education, science education, and diversity. And she has conducted a number of attitudinal studies of the students and teachers. She teaches several graduate courses for doctoral students. She has served as a member on several state and national educational committees. She also coordinates the postgraduate research program of YCMU at HBCSC. She was a member of the focus group, the position paper, Gender Issues in the Curriculum for the National Curriculum Framework in the year 2005 at NCERT. Apart from the research, she has been involved in the numerous enrichment and development programs for teachers and students. She has guided thesis of student and is a reviewer of papers in journals and for the conferences and is an examiner of master's and doctorate thesis. With this brief introduction, I welcome you, Professor Dr. Sugra Chunawala, Madam, and request you to deliver your talk for this session. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Toy. So I'll do my screen share right now.
Ma'am, since you're a co-host, you can share your screen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So firstly, I'll begin by thanking Maithili for inviting me to be a part of this session, and to also the host college who has invited me. And I've been asked to speak on gender inclusion in higher education, which is one of my interests. And I'll go down about it. So as you are all aware, in the recent years, there has been a movement to prepare teachers to be aware of issues relating to gender inequities in classrooms. So what I will do is, I will ask you to type in the chat if you can think of any gender inequities that happen in classrooms. And while you're doing that, of course, I'll go ahead. So basically, my interest is science education, though I come from a social science background. And the reforms in higher education, particularly in science, have tried to come up with some strategies that one can use to deal with these gender equities in the classroom. And the new approaches reflect these some practices which may be better than the earlier ones, and they focus on not favoring a group over another. It's not individuals over others, but groups over others. So I will just see if there are any chat answers as to what are the gender inequities which happen in classrooms. And if you are aware of any alternative strategies which are equitable.
Dear participants, if you can respond to query of Madam, or then it would help in interaction. Thank you.
Okay. So I have got some comments. That one comment was that in urban areas we do not see this. That's an interesting comment, and this will be like what Maithili pointed out, that there are often differing views on the same topic. So whether there is gender discrimination or not, it could be one of those divergent views. There is another person, Dr. Meeta Rakesh, who says that often one sees that certain subjects in science are more, certain disciplines are more favored by certain groups, by certain genders over the others. And therefore you may find that there are more females in microbiology and less in mathematics. And again, there is a clarification by Dr. Shinde, I think, that there is no discrimination in classrooms. Okay, that is also a point that we should think about, that there is no discrimination in classrooms. We can think about this as we go ahead. And then there is Naumita who says that gender inequalities do not happen in classrooms, but they happen when we are applying for jobs. Munira Kambawala is suggesting that often girl students are encouraged to take certain subjects. And Ishita Boshal says that I haven't faced any such scenario in the personal context. That is possible that, you know, in our personal lives, we may not face any such things. And that Mr. or Dr. Prashant Shah is mentioning that in classroom, everybody is equal and people say that they agree to it. Moitri Saha again mentions that education has not changed the deep-rooted convictions that some subjects are suitable to certain gender and there is role discrimination and some subjects are only for some genders. I'm very happy that people are posting for and against views. It's very interesting that there are these kind of differing perceptions of the same topic. That gender inequities in classroom may not be deliberate, right? But they may be subtle and we may not even be aware of it, that it is happening, and therefore we may fail to identify that it's happening. This, Smita Reni, this is a very good answer that you have given, or a very good comment that you have made, that often these gender issues are so subtle that we do not realize what is happening. And somebody mentioned some place, so I will not name that place. Girls outnumber boys in certain subjects, yes. Then Dr. Moses says that girls from minority community may face issues sometimes. And again, Subhash Shinde says that parents do discriminate. Munira says that consequently, curriculum and pedagogy also are gendered. This is also a very interesting point, which we should take up later and look at it. Whether there is when we talk about in the classroom, what do we mean? What are all the components in the classroom? Okay. One is the curriculum, one is the pedagogy, one is peer interactions, one is language, like somebody mentioned, the language which we use. And somebody says, I agree with Smita ma'am, so I don't know. Yes, very good. Yeah. I had to go back to see Smita Reni's comment. Somebody saying that like nursing is only for girls. Oh, you can't hear me?
They probably expect you to be a little louder, maybe. You're audible, but maybe a little louder.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry if that happened. I'll try to be louder.
Maybe you can bring the mouthpiece closer to you.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your suggestions. Somebody mentions that rural girls get married earlier and therefore there is dropout in the classroom. So the gender enrollment issues and gender, just the number of women in the classroom may be due to certain factors. And then somebody says that we as higher education institutes do not discriminate, but parents do in rural areas. This is an interesting point and I will come to it and I will talk about this issue. Language is often not gender sensitive, correct? And after MScs or even PhDs, girls may be married off and may not be in those. So there are lots of comments which have come from you all and which are very interesting. One of the things which I wanted to say is, you know, when somebody says that we do not discriminate, but rural areas it happens. One of our findings is, and of course not just mine, it is reported in the India Science Report, that there are very few science colleges in rural areas. That is because of the requirement of laboratories and other such facilities. And therefore, in fact, I mean, I'm saying this from my personal experience also, because I come from a village. And in my village also, the college which has opened is a commerce college, because that requires very little, or arts. It requires very little laboratories and things like that. So the infrastructure itself is kind of discriminating, but it is not discriminating here, we would say. It is not discriminating because it is reflecting for both boys and girls. But very often boys are sent to far off places and girls may not be sent off to a place which is very far off. So that is just one example that I said. But let us go ahead and there are lots of comments which if I go to read, can the host from Sangamner College help me by reading some of these comments?
Sure, ma'am. Sure. I guess we had gone down till Dr. Digambar Ghodke says parents thinks in terms of money, they prefer professional education for boys. In fact, I have also commented on the same line that boys do not turn up for conventional courses. They go for professional courses such as engineering. Dr. Madhuri says even in small town, girls get married after degree. Gender discrimination can also be from management, faculty, and other stakeholders, says Anuradha Shekhar, ma'am. Dr. Priya Sundararajan says in rural areas, number of colleges are less and girls are discouraged from joining colleges, which is seconded by Dr. Suweba. And Suhas Khandare, sir, or I'm sorry, I do not know. Professor Suhas Khandare says that educational institutes generally are not discriminative. Dr. Vinda says that they prefer girl to learn distance education, go through distance education.
Sure, sure.
So all sorts of opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So it has been nice to know that there are various opinions and that there is often a lot of research also, but often even the research also may not be very convincing to various people for various reasons, and we will come to some of those. Uh, but I will say this, that some people mentioned that language is not gender sensitive, and I have some slides on that which we will come to later. So now for the time being, we'll go ahead with my slide. So this was a point which even Dr. Maithili brought up, that we need to accommodate and bring in various students' needs, interests, and experiences. There is, and especially we say that both in science and in science education, there is a need for the subject itself to grow from inputs from various people. So there is an attempt to promote, nowadays there is an attempt to promote awareness and appreciation of the cultures and differences that may be there amongst various people. And the gender inclusive pedagogy includes understanding that teaching and learning of science is not taking place in a vacuum. We are taking place in a social system, and therefore the society is going to kind of impact what is going on inside the classroom also. And therefore, for us to have this kind of an attitude that science, there was earlier an attitude that science is extremely objective. Okay, there is this nature of science debate whether science is so objective, and teachers have this feeling that science is objective and therefore nothing impacts it, or though science will impact entire society, society does not impact science. This statement is almost similar to the statement that classrooms do not discriminate, that classrooms are extremely objective. So these are a parallel I see between science education and teacher professional development or teacher education, where we tend to believe that, we are so objective, we do not discriminate. But even if we are not doing it deliberately, it can happen in subtle ways, like Rennie madam pointed out. Similarly, in science, the topics we choose for study impact the kind of knowledge that is growing, and therefore there is an impact. Science is not absolutely objective, it has a subjective element also. So now I go to my next slide. So since we live in society, it's extremely complex. It has a cultural history, it has an economic and political and social events which have their own history and interconnectedness. And part of this complexity is our own life history. Each one of us have a complex life history. The students have a complex life history, and there can be this tension between the teaching and learning, between the teacher and the student and the peers, which includes all these very many aspects. And just for sharing with you is that, since I said that we all have a life history, it's also time and space in our life is positional. Today, what I think about various things may not be the same which I may have taught earlier. And similarly, when we do research also, very often feminist studies talk about this positionality. as to who I am, my research, why am I taking up this research, my motivations. These are important. If there is any comment, please let me know, because I'm going ahead and may not be getting the feedback from you. And teaching and learning of science is relational. It has this intertwined relationships between the student and the teacher. It's dynamic, it changes, as I said, our position change, and it's political, which was mentioned. So race, class, gender. In our context, we also said language. We also at times religion and various aspects also, uh, region, rural, urban. All these things matter, and they have this political dimension.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. If you can switch over to slideshow mode.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Pleasure, ma'am. Thank you.
So, I was just saying, and y'all are all aware of this, that the aim of inclusive pedagogy is to have an approach that will make learning welcoming to everybody, and it makes people not feel that that they are a burden on the rest of the people. So it will critique the deficit approach. Very often we have had instances of remedial teaching where we say that these people say have poor language skills, so let us have remedial classes for them. This would often assume that those students who are already disadvantaged need to put in extra effort, and that they need to get additional support beyond the classroom. By contrast, inclusive pedagogy will say that within the classroom, we should create such a situation. For example, I mean, if I knew that all of you are speaking Marathi, I should also speak in Marathi so that it becomes easier for everybody to get it. But that will not necessarily always happen, because the class also has many, many languages. It's not just one language that we are talking about. So what are the various things? There are certain things which I'll come to, but my experience has been with working with children and school education rather than higher education, but I'm trying to talk about higher education here because your system is dealing with that. So at present, this is one paper that you can check out. I should have shared it with you earlier, but you can look at it. It's by Bimla Ramchandran. It talks about gender issues in higher education. It's an advocacy brief which she has given for UNESCO in Bangkok, 2010. And she says that one of the strategies that we should have for dealing with gender issues is gender mainstreaming. This is what I think to some extent Maithili mentioned, that we don't use gender as tokenism. We do not want just that, one token girl or one token faculty is there in the physics department, but it is to be a globally accepted strategy. The aim is for sensitization and educating the key stakeholders that when you're marginalizing women and when there are gender inequalities, the effect is borne by everybody. It's not just that the girls are suffering, the effects are borne by the entire education system as a whole, from pre-primary to tertiary and lifelong learning. So what would mainstreaming involve? It came out in your words to some of y'all that it would involve changes in education policy. And when I listened to what some of your responses when Maithili asked you, there were these things about reservations. There are these things about scholarships, free ships, which may be available on a gender basis also. But one of the persons mentioned also curriculum, that there is a curriculum that often will have to be dealt with, that we may need to make changes in the curriculum in certain ways. There is need for research to bring out what we say is evidence for the things that we are saying. And there is advocacy, that we kind of struggle for or fight for those things which we believe in. Resource allocation, Maithili mentioned to some extent in redistribution, and facilities and planning, implementation and monitoring of tertiary education programs. What I will do is, like Maithili, I will also stop here. And I would now ask you, actually Maithili asked me to come up with at least one strategy that can be practiced for gender
equity. So I would now break for 2 minutes and ask you all to write down any one strategy that you think can be taken up for gender equity in higher education. I'll stop now for 2 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you want them to write down the strategy in chat box alone?
Yeah, yes, that may be better.
Yeah. And I'll help you by reading them out. Yeah.
Sure.
So dear participants, Professor Sugra Chunawala ma'am wants you to write down strategies, and you can come up with at least one strategy. If you can, madam, further elaborate what exactly do you expect them to come down to, probably that will help them a bit.
I think let them start.
Yeah, they're coming up now.
They do quite well on their own.
Yes. Shall I start reading them out? There are a few which are coming up now.
Sure.
Dr. Usha Mukundan says that flexibility in terms of duration of a course, which I think the Academic Credit Bank would do now.
Okay, that's very good. That flexibility, yeah.
Yes. Dr. Ravindra Tasildar, Vice Principal of the host college, says that prescribe more text by women writers in literature courses, example, women playwrights.
Okay, so this is like in the curriculum.
Yes. Dr. Soni George says, firstly, it's important to identify the problem and the nature and reason for the same.
So that would be research?
Yes. Dr. Nomita Dhume says, exemption from paying fees or discounted fee.
Okay, so that is resource.
Yes. So strategies have started coming up. Another one is Dr. Priya Sundar Rajan, who says have reservation for women in various courses. Professor Indira Andela from Host College says implementing technology in classroom.
Yes.
Dr. Smita Reni says using gender neutral language when possible, arrange seating intentionally.
Yes.
Dr. Manasi.
Can you say what do you mean by intentionally?
Intentionally, and probably it's planned way, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Pre-decided kind of probably. Smita Reni ma'am, can you come in maybe just to elaborate more on it? I'll unmute for a while. Smita ma'am, please, if you can. Smita
yes,
ma'am,
sir. One moment.
Your voice is echoing, ma'am. Probably you are on two systems right now. Anyways, in the meanwhile, I'll go for what others are saying as well. Dr. Manasi is talking about scholarships availability. Dr. Moses talks about listen to your students in honest manner.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Ismita Gupta says flexibility in learning. Dr. Ishita Ghoshal says research towards eradication of pay gap based on gender, which might incentivize more women to take up higher studies. Dr. Sanjay Kumar Darvi, HOD Physics from Host College, says that gender champion scheme of UGC should be effectively implemented.
Can you elaborate, Professor Dalvi?
I'll unmute him and seek more light on the same. Darvi sir, you can unmute yourself and put your thoughts across. Darvi sir, if you can please.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Please go.
Yes, there is a scheme launched by UGC. Many days that is there, but I feel that no colleges has been given the right attention to this scheme. The scheme is very good. Whatever we are talking since last hours, all things are given in that particular scheme. So I'll share that scheme with
everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Because it is a very big draft and its objective is very broad. It's a broad mandate of a gender champion is to provide an integrated and interdisciplinary approach to understanding the social and cultural construction of gender that shape the experiences of women and men in society. The aim is to make the young boys and girls gender sensitive and creative positive social norms that value the girls and their rights. So this is the very broad objective, and I feel that whatever we are discussing, that is rightly conveyed in this.
So Dr. Dalvi, please share it in the chat box with everybody. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. If you can share the link or maybe the file itself in the chat box, that will do. Right? Yes, ma'am, you were about to say something.
I was saying that I think she's saying that now her mic is fine, so she can answer.
Yeah, I just go back to what was this, Smita ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes, Smita ma'am, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You're audible.
Yeah. What I meant about intentional placing is that not to have segregated seatings separately for the students, because once they're out of the education sphere, they have to spend their life. We have to spend our lives in a society which is not keeping us away. We are living in families, we are working in offices where we are interacting with the other gender, both the parties. So then the sooner we get comfortable with that, the better it is, rather than having separate areas, one side for boys and one side for girls, or the front of the class for girls and the back side for the boys. So these kind of things actually promote this kind of discrimination. This is what I feel.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, Dr. Varsha, who will be coming after in the next session, has actually, I think, commented on this.
Okay.
She says that we should give preference. Do you want to say something, Dr. Varsha?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Sugra. I just thought that it's good to have preferences from people instead of, it's a good idea that the previous person had said about it, that, the sooner the better. And so we have seen the co-ed schools also.
Yeah. And single schools
am I
also.
audible? Yes.
Yes, ma'am,
But I
you are.
just thought that, asking preferences is a better strategy.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Varsha, actually. And yeah, this is also another area, I think, in which, there are conflicting research reports also that, which one is which Smita madam shared, Reni ma'am said, that that we want people to be independent as early as possible. But very often there are also reports that students in single sex schools, are often girls in those schools are often grow up much more independent and open without any pressures also. And maybe in certain situations these may be required also. So one of the strategies has been to also keep them available, to keep single sex universities also available, which is there even in the US. It's not as if that they are there only in places like Pakistan, but they are there everywhere. So it's like giving a preference, like madam said. Okay, you keep them open, and those who for certain reasons want to go there may take that. Yes, can you read the other comments?
Yeah, sure. There are many strategies that are coming up. This is by Dr. Bhavna. Gender discrimination starts at home, so have compulsory good parenting courses. It may have an impact in long term. Professor Suhas Khandare, there should be counseling of parents, society, and everyone to go for healthy behavior as far as gender discrimination is concerned. Priya Sundararajan says that many strategies could be area specific, meaning rural and urban. The problems could be different in different areas. True. Then Dr. Moitri Saha, she says, when we speak about gender, sensitizing the teachers about the gender. Of course, Varsha madam has made the comment and clarification as well on online. Then Dr. Subhash J. Shinde need to sensitize and motivate parents to enroll the daughters for higher education, discrimination starts from home. Dr. Sulakshana says counseling parents during parents' meets in the college. Dr. Soni George says we need to look at not just the big cities, but the tier 3 and tier 4 towns and look at the initiatives to provide an equitable solution to the issue. Dr. Anuradha Shekhar says role models make a very big difference. So talks by role models to all the stakeholders can be planned. Dr. B.M. Konde says that teacher imparted with values of equity and inclusiveness will be crucial in attaining most of the goals in every sector of higher education. And followed by that, Dr. Sanjay Kumar Darvi has shared the link of from the UGC guidelines for gender champions. That is followed by Dr. Anita Goswami's strategy support for non-traditional vocations. Yeah. Dr. Priya Sundararajan again says that awareness amongst parents and girl students to take up education. Dr. Meena Sharma says genuine selection on the basis of merit rather saying for a particular event, one male and one female candidate should be chosen. Dr. Norman says increase girls representation in various cultural and other committees and make girl leaders of the groups. Dr. Poonam Deshpande from Ferguson College has, I guess, listed more than one strategies. Number one, making curriculum better to increase skill competency and employability. Number two, set number of seats oblique reservations for both boys and girls. Like I see in PG courses of life sciences, more girls are there than boys as more girls score better in entrance exams or graduate exams in that particular discipline. So less boys end up in taking admission to these courses. This is as per her observation, based on her observation.
Okay.
Dr. Ishita Ghoshal.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there are only two more. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Ishita Ghoshal says fostering a comfort zone for students irrespective of gender by nudging them towards working together in groups. For example, communication is the key, I believe. And Dr. Nupur Mehrotra says peer-peer monitoring can be helpful along with initiatives from college. That's all.
Yeah, good. So this basically, I mean, there was one comment which perhaps there could be more discussion, which is genuine selection on the basis of merit. Okay, this also is because we know that there is a lot about merit and meritocracy that one can think about, and whether when we say that it is genuine selection on the basis of merit, whether how genuine is the selection, how much is when we say that one male, I just want to say is that we at the center, Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, we are part of the Olympiad. So there are the science Olympiads and students, and maths Olympiads, and students are selected from all over the country and they represent India in the world. So there may be a team of 4 or 5 which is sent people, and uh, whenever I have spoken to them, they have used the same argument that it should be based on merit. It should, but there were these other comments also which came up about role models. If you choose people, at least in the camps, maybe not in the final team. Yes, somebody asked how genuine is merit based only on marks. So if you select people, at least in the camps, they can be company for each other. Like suppose there is only one girl out of 35 boys, then the point is that she feels left out in that whole group, and her performance may really suffer because the camp is for 3 weeks and those kind of things. So there are various elements to this argument about merit which one can think about. I just want to say that there are countries like Saudi Arabia which have reservations for girls also. That the team of 5 will have 2 girls at least. The point is that if you, what is the Olympiad for? Is it only for getting medals, or is it to create a love for science among students and to spread this amongst as many students as possible? Okay, so we have to look at what we mean by merit, what we are getting involved in, and those kind of things. Is my slide visible now, sir?
Ma'am, it's not on slideshow mode.
Yeah, okay. I'll just stop everything. Okay. Start from current slide.
Yeah, it's fine now.
This is not interfering, right? Okay. Okay. So what we are saying is that when we are talking about higher education, it is really a very complex and a very vast domain, and I'm just giving a kind of introduction now to what is higher education. It involves lots of things. It involves lots of subjects. It could be science, humanities. We don't need to read all these kind of things. But if you read the last line, in most countries, the progress to higher education is often linear, meaning you have to complete various goals, milestones. You have to complete your primary education, your secondary education before you go into tertiary education. You can't directly jump into tertiary education, even if you're very bright and very meritorious, as we are saying. And therefore, these steps, since they are there, higher education will not be standing alone. It is at one end of the linear scale, and all the cumulative baggage that students have developed over so many years in school will be carried on. All the advantages and disadvantages will be carried on into the higher education space. So therefore, I just wanted to say, because we talked about merit and various things, you all are aware of these terms like cultural capital, and you are also aware of these terms like first generation learners. So people who come from first generation, when the family is the first time that they are learning, the way the children develop is very different, and they will carry certain disadvantages when they go into the higher education space, which students who come from very traditional learning families do not carry. They have in fact cultural capital with them. So but when you look at what has been the access for girls, some of the policies have looked at, increasing access through affirmative action. So there will be quotas, more seats will be reserved for women, or there may be, like I said, women only universities. There will be attempt at having greater participation of women in technical and science education. There will be also an attempt at nurturing and developing women studies groups. So research into women studies and women representation in managerial positions in higher education, because there has been research which has shown that despite that, we say that, the number of girls in higher education is increasing, the faculty also may be increasing, but if you look at the topmost positions, the deans and the directors, they tend to be largely very few women. So there is a need to have a better analysis of what is happening in the higher education sector. And here I will, since we talked about strategies, I will mention here one strategy. This is one paper I wanted to share with you, and I don't know whether it reached you all, but I shared it only today. It's by Zara Hazari, Jeff Potwin, and various other people. And they have looked at physics and career interest of female students. And they have looked at 5 common hypotheses. What will make girls interested in physics? So these were the 5 hypotheses they used. Having a single sex physics class, that is only girls classroom. Having women scientists as guest speakers, so have lots of women scientists. So they are the role models. Having a female teacher versus a male teacher. Discussing the work of women scientists and discussing the underrepresentation of women. And with this research analysis, they found that the only method which worked or had a significant effect was the last one, discussing the underrepresentation of women in the classroom. Now, I'm just sharing with you a research. Whether we agree with it or whether we don't is a different part, but they have consistently been working, and I've seen their papers over a number of years. So it's not just 2013, but various years that they have been working in, and they have been looking at how to increase women's entry into physics. So now what I will do is, since I gave you so much of the background about uh, school education, and because a lot of my work has been with school education, I will just say that, and some work I had done with the National Curriculum Framework, I will just say that the status of higher education, depends on on also on school. Okay, and I just want to share with you a poem which we had put in the gender position paper, which in fact I like very much, so I thought I'll just share it with you. You may all be aware of it already. So it says that in my textbooks, I learned that only men are kings and soldiers. till I read a book in which famous queens ruled and fought against enemies. In my textbooks, I learned that only men are doctors. When I went to a doctor, I saw that she was a woman. In my textbooks, I learned that only men do farming in my country. Until on a train journey, I saw women working in the fields. I have learned that I have a lot to learn by seeing. And this is a poem written by students of class 7 from Baroda. So what it really means is, therefore, often our curriculum is not reflecting what is actually there. Very often when I raise these issues in teacher professional development workshops or a workshop like this, I have had people saying that what we are representing is the reality. You want us to show books. Yes, somebody is saying that they want to share their experience. This is Dr. Dalvi.
Okay. Do you want me to unmute him, ma'am?
Yeah, please.
Davisa, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to share my one experience regarding that paper regarding physics.
Sure.
Though I'm a volunteer of physics, let me share this nice experience. And if somebody from education field wants to do some research, he's welcome. Since last 3 years, out of 3 years for PG class, there are all girl students are there in PG class, MSc Physics or MSc Physics. Whatever the causes were given in that paper, I don't agree with those all, but maybe only 8 to 10% women, girl students, they got married out of the 100% capacity. So that was a very nice experience with us, and we are having both male and female teachers at the same level. So I don't agree with the arguments made in that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dalvi. The point what I'm trying to say is that these people have, I mean, there are different, like we said, we have to look it in within the context. So they are looking at a different context, we are looking at a different context, and not necessarily we have to agree with all the research which is done in the West.
Yeah, thank you.
We have to look for the research in our own, and I'm very grateful that you have volunteered. So please send me your email address and I'll try to get somebody from our center to work with you.
Yes, please, ma'am.
Yeah. And somebody is saying the paper is available. Yeah, okay. So you all got that paper. Thank you. And somebody says, can you go to the previous slide, meaning the slide before this? Munira? Yes, okay. So here I went quickly, yeah, I know, but I thought the time is also an issue, but I'll say it. So higher education often reflects the country's social and economic development, because it will lead to, highly skilled and knowledgeable personnel. But there is also a deep relationship between higher education and education for all. If students get meaningful education opportunities in school, then they will be attracted to going for a higher education also. And if their educational opportunities at school are very poor, then they will definitely not be attracted to go to school further. Like we saw earlier, some people said girls drop out. Promotion of participation of women and men of all social and ethnic groups can have a significant downstream effect. So this is like where we are saying like a role models. Presence of more women in public and private sectors such as school teachers, journalists, bank employees and so on will have a ripple effect, creating role models for women and girls in traditional communities where gender discrimination and sex segregation are the norm. So this will, just their presence will make a difference. And so then we came to this poem. Yeah. And this is one work which I had done, which is done long back. It's done in 1998. It has been replicated again. And this was an international collaborative project between 23 countries. And the results were quite similar. The students were just asked to draw a scientist. They are not given any hints. They are just told draw a scientist. And 86% of the drawings were of a male scientist, as you can see here. And many people have done this study afterwards and before also. And these drawings tend to be very stereotypical, and chemistry is more often depicted because of test tubes and things like that. Female scientists are rare, and then when they were drawn, they were more often drawn by girls. Now the picture hopefully will be changing, and some studies are showing a changed picture. Then they were asked to write about scientists, use some adjectives to describe scientists. And one of the things in India is that students are very positive towards scientists. So they use very, very positive images, such as hardworking, intelligent, imaginative, helpful. And they use words. What do scientists do? They make, they find, they discover, they study, they observe, they prove, they research. And very often they would use the word they, so that the gender male and female is not known. Okay. But the textbooks, like you all said, mentioned earlier, this is a very old study, but it's classic study where it shows that use of gendered language in textbook. It's by Narendranath Kalia, and women are portrayed in very few lessons, and the ratio is 1:3. And when 75% of the lesson plots showed men as very dominant figures and women as very passive figures. This is not illustrations. This is the plot of the story. And this was one paragraph from the earlier NCERT textbooks before the NCF, which says, how does a scientist work? A scientist works in the same way similar to a doctor. He first gathers information to identify the problem. He then collects more information through keen observation, measurements, etc. He thinks over the observations and possibilities. He tests each possibility by experiments or repeated observations to collect data. He then calculates, compares, and draws conclusion. If he finds his thinking incorrect, he tries to find out the mistakes and readily corrects himself. This is the scientific approach. Now the fact is, what when this is pointed out, very many teachers say that, oh, he is generic. It stands for both male and female. But there has been research which has been shown that even very young children, when they look at these kind of the picture which is created in their mind, the picture which they imagine when they are asked what they think about when they read this, is of a male. It's not of a generic human or he or she. So this is the language issue. And there are also illustrations which often depict this kind of things. The first was the text, the next is illustrations, which we have done work. And which I promised you earlier that I would say that when we ask teachers that what do you do, do you ever make use different examples for girls, and so that it will interest girls also. And we have found that some teachers say that no, I do not. That though she notices that there are gender differences, she is firm on not addressing them. And she reasons that by doing this, if she would do that, she would be supporting gender differences. Now, if the examples in the textbooks are very much suited to a very masculine orientation. Yeah. So I have already got some comments. Sir, can you read some of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Give me a moment. I'll follow it from start. Yes, of course, some of the comments are assertive ones, agreeing to what you said.
And some are negative. That's okay.
Yes. How many women contest election is like, again, kind of debate that Vinda madam wants to initiate. Scientists, whether they can be male or female, that is another way of discussing it. Dr. Sarla Menon, she says it is only 3% of total population are women scientists in India. The percentage of women in apex bodies are very few. The reason after PG, the major consent of the society is to get women enter into family bonding and child rearing. Girls are flocked in higher education institutions because they have nothing to do till they get married. This is the scenario in rural India. Most of the course girls enter are non-productive, where boys opt for productive courses so they can support the family. So mostly the opinions have been expressed here.
Yeah, fine. So I just wanted for a break also. So I just wanted to say that there are these kind of views that how many women are scientists, and this is what at HPCSE we have a exhibition which says the history of science exhibition. Okay, and because that very few scientists are depicted there, This is another exhibition that I was involved in, which we created, which is there. It's a permanent exhibition, which is Gender in Science, which gives a big list of women scientists who are there. This is because very often people don't know that which are the women scientists. There was somebody who asked how many women scientists are there. This was one question. That, yes, female scientists are very few, but are we aware of them? Or do we know only Marie Curie? That is one of the things when we ask questions, how many women scientists are there? So that is one of the things. And this is one of the, I think my last slides, I will end with it because I think I've exceeded my time. This is a book of textbook analysis, which I told you that can be done. And we all already heard critical pedagogy earlier. So this was one of the papers which I've been involved in, which is conceptualizing critical science education. And it is a feminist critique of the science textbook. And it shows that often that there is, this chapter, at least human reproduction, has a very patriarchal reductionist science. And there were interviews besides my own and my students' interpretation of this chapter. There were also interviews with teachers who teach this textbook and how they view this topic. So I just want to say thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the email from, I think, Dr. Dalvi, his email address, so that I can contact him. And thank you, everybody. And if there is any other question that you want to ask me, please go ahead.
There are few in the chat box now. There's one by Dr. Munira, using different examples to account for the different interests of boys and girls. Ma'am, could you please elaborate what these would include?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I mean, this is, when we were taking, one of the examples is in the, you can say that this is right or wrong or whatever, but one of the examples which I say is that I'm involved in design and technology education also. So one of the problems which I said to many of the people who come there is that, suppose it's a long answer, so sorry if it sounds very strange, but one of the problems which I said to students, and this is also with my student who has been working with me, Farat Ara, who has worked, and it is that suppose you have a grandmother who's very old and she likes to do some clothes stitching, but her needle always falls down, and it is very difficult for her to bend and also for her to pick it up. So what would you design that would help her? And if this was a different lecture, I would have shown you pictures of the designs that people have made from elaborate wheelchairs that go up and down to a magnet on a stick which the grandmother can use. So these are the kind of examples. Or one of the examples was that by a girl, that she would make a bracelet to which the needle and thread is tied so that the needle never falls. So there are various such examples that one can think of. So for example, to teach the same topic that you want to teach of, and so I just asked that suppose you were to teach a certain example and you feel that that science is being taught in a way where that example is very masculine. So for example, it is like putting air in the pump, pumping air in a bicycle. So what could be an alternate example for that we could give girls? Munira madam, I'm asking for an answer from you.
I'll try and unmute her and then see if she can interact with you.
Thinking.
She's thinking, she says.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, but this is really good. I mean, we never think that there could be examples from the other perspective as well. We take it for granted. I remember my textbook, which always showed the boys pumping air in the bicycle tires. So really, thank you so much for making me think about this. I hope I would be able to come, but offhand, I'm not able to think of anything. But maybe blowing a balloon for the child's birthday party.
Yes, that's possible.
Yeah, because that's what mummies do.
Yeah. So I think I'll. Is there any other question or comment?
No, ma'am. There's one comment alone. Apex bodies are male dominated because women have restriction. They cannot go out late evening when actually this men do give and take. So this is what Dr. Binda makes as a comment. And there's another one where Dr. Saha says that armed forces also show gender discrimination.
Sure. So fine, I think I'll stop now because I have really exceeded my time and I don't want to. Okay, so Priya Wagh has raised a hand.
That probably is by mistake.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody. I'll be around for Varsha Gattu madam's talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. From curriculum designing to the materials development, whatever is gender discrimination, you have focused a lot on this. And I think autonomous colleges are trying to revamp the current syllabi. Whatever we blame on the universities that they have done this, they have done that, autonomous colleges and have the chance to update the syllabi with giving proper weighting to every gender. You have focused on women. I think we may take into account third gender as well.
Yeah.
The representation has to be taken into account so that we can sensitize the next generation. Thank you very much for your insightful inputs, man. I hope this FDP itself sensitizes us to the gender, except we few members of the host college, most of the resource persons are representing women gender. And if you think in terms of percentage, we may also understand this. For last 4 days, all the resource persons are women. And that's why we are setting a trend from our platform itself. Thank you very much once again. Now we may move on to the next resource person. I now request Dr. Srinivas Bhong, member IQSC of the host college, to introduce Varsha ma'am.
Good evening, all. I would like to introduce briefly Dr. Varsha Gattu ma'am. Dr. Varsha ma'am is a professional working over 3 decades in the field of special inclusive education. She is Fulbright Senior Research Fellow, Lent Fellow of University of Connecticut, USA, and also a recipient of Rotary International Ambassadorial Scholarship for pursuing master's degree at the Washington University, USA. For over 22 years, Dr. Varsha is the head of the Department of Education at the National Institute for the Hearing Handicapped, Mumbai. She has worked as a chief examiner of the Rehabilitation Council of India. Dr. Varsha ma'am was the founder chairperson of the Ad hoc Board of Special Education. She has guided 6 PhD scholars. She has contributed to professional development manuals of World Bank and Mauritius Institute of Education. Dr. Varsha ma'am has developed teacher training manuals for IGNOU, YCMOU, NSOU, and Tamil Nadu Open University. She has been awarded the Best Teacher Award amongst all the affiliated colleges of the University of Mumbai for her valuable contributions in knowledge, teaching, research, and dedication. Thank you. Over to Dr. Tashildar, sir.
Dr. Varsha ma'am, sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. May I request Dr. Varsha ma'am to begin with her session?
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Maithili, and the organizers for inviting me to this prestigious FDP and I know that there are many esteemed BOS members of different autonomous institutions. You would find my presentation probably a treat to the eyes, and that I have been always saying in TISS also, for two reasons. Basically, as has been introduced in the previous this thing, that I deal with people who are linguistically challenged, or people who have difficulties in probably reading and understanding. So through this platform of BOS members, I would like to impress that there may be people in the colleges who require certain skills which for reading or for understanding, which probably other students won't require. So here are the voices of the people. And what Sugra madam was, when she was talking about gender equality and issues related to gender, I felt for myself that, there is a group of marginalized within the marginalized. So women with disabilities are a further marginalized group amongst this. So voices of the people, I am going to restrict this thing about inclusion in higher education, and Maithili has requested me to touch upon UDL, the way forward. So Jyoti, are you managing my slides? The next slide, please. Jyoti? Jyoti, you want, hello?
Just a minute, ma'am. Allow me to comment. Jyoti, ma'am, if it is not working from your end, I'll share it from my end. But Bhaviskar sir, if you can share from your end, please. Varsham, give me a minute. We are sharing it from our end now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the scope, what I am dealing today with is what is the need of the hour, especially in the light of RPWD Act. That is what Maithili has asked me to touch upon. And I have brought in the provisions of the NEP 2020 also. And I would probably rush through the slides because the time is 5:30 closure time. So I would take in the comments or the questions there in the chat box later if the time permits. So the next slide, please. In today's 21st century learning, the need of the hour is inclusive and equitable education. So whether it is higher education or it is school education, inclusion is the mantra. And the national education policy also very rightly talks about the inclusive policies. My only submission there was that they have put in, inclusion as in the background itself, but the people with disabilities, and I have been emphasizing this, is always it is like, an annexure or an appendix in the end. So right from the beginning, if the national education policy also had brought in, like if it is foundational literacy, school education, higher education, if it is for all, it's not for able-bodied people or people who are so-called the average people, then probably we would still say that, we are moving towards inclusive education. So we talk of inclusion, but again, it is marginalization even in our policies. We should be talking about the equitable education. And when we say equitable education, it is the socially just pedagogy. It's not just the social justice. So it is, the goals are same for all children. It is whether the children want to take whichever different routes they want to take, but goal of education should be same. It is not just the goal for special needs people. The next slide. So what truly is inclusive education? Inclusive education is not fulfilling just the reservation criteria of institutes, whether it is workplace or it is colleges or it is boards, or the board of directors in public sector companies. The inclusion is not just tolerance; it is unquestioned acceptance. And Purki has given a very, I like the invitational theory of inclusive education. It's said in this theory that the programs, places, people, the 5 Ps that they talk of. So the places have to be inclusive. And when we say places, it is the artifacts of the institutions which should speak about inclusive practices. So your vision mission document or your institutional organizational structure itself, it has to be more and more inclusive. And I think we should also talk about people first language also when we talk of inclusive education. So the places have to be inclusive and welcoming to all people, and not just say that, okay, this is the staircase for everybody, but this is the ramp for the wheelchair people. So instead, if we can have ramps, it serves both the purpose. People have to have inclusive approach, mind, attitude, and not just, sympathy or it has, I feel inclusive education has become fashionable these days. I'm sorry to have said that, but it's becoming more and more fashionable. You see the international schools, they talk of inclusive pedagogies and everything. So more and more, but I feel our villages are more inclusive. Our policies have to be inclusive. And in India, there have been policy documentations, research, where they say that India has the best of the best policies. So we just need the deliverables. Everything is there in the policy. Even national education policy has a lot to offer, but it is the processes which have to be really inbuilt, and the processes have to be more and more inclusive. The next slide. So what really is inclusion? If we see, then people have this thing that inclusion is more to do with admitting people with disabilities, but it's not just people with disabilities. And disability is, in my opinion, a human diversity. It can affect anybody at any time. And it's not, we saw the earthquake of Kutch, where so many people became physically disabled. We have so many, now that the act has brought in so many other disabilities, but I feel variability is the norm. And persons with disabilities are more of a heterogeneous group. They are not a homogeneous group. So understanding the misunderstanding is the best understanding ever, I feel. So they are not an homogeneous group. The other myth that one has to, every time we see that, whether it is CBSC meetings or, just we were working on the e-content guidelines for the CBSC textbooks. We have developed a lot of guidelines for visually challenged, for autistic children, for hearing impaired. People always feel that just giving them sign language videos will help. But sign language is not also on the mother tongue of all deaf children. And similarly, Braille also has to be learned. It is not acquired. It's a skill. Aids and devices are sufficient is what people feel. So whenever there is something in at university level also, they say that, print the question paper in Braille or give the books in Braille. This is not sufficient. Aids and devices are just supports. Those are assistive devices for people with disabilities. There's also a misnomer that higher education is impossible, because worldwide we see this trend that people with disabilities are less than 1% of them are in higher education. But then whose fault is it? Is it the person with disability, or it is the society who has created the disabling conditions? We need to ponder on this, and unless and until we do this, we won't have them into the higher education setup. The next slide. The plight of many of the persons with disabilities are many disabilities are invisible. Whenever we have a disability thing at airports also, you may have seen that you have the wheelchair person uh, on the accessible toilet, but there are many disabilities which are invisible. The socio-emotionally affected people. Now with COVID, the thing has risen so much. We have a National Institute of Mental Health coming in Sihor under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. And the helpline there, Kiran, has just gone up so much in times of COVID. So there are many disabilities which are outwardly not visible. For example, people may have autism spectrum disorders, ASD. Learning disabilities is very common, and so are the deaf and hard of hearing people. The more the disability, that is, the more is the profound loss, the more are they visible, meaning more are they under people recognize them. Like totally blind person you would recognize, but a student who has got low vision or a tunnel vision will not be so obvious. So many of the disabilities are invisible, and that is the greatest plight. The next slide. So if the next slide. Yeah. So it's the iceberg. If you see, you only see the tip. So only we recognize the people who are with, blindness, or the people who are orthopedically handicapped. But there may be people who have speech problems of stuttering and stammering, or dwarfism, and there are even emotionally challenged children. It only so happens that when they do their parking in the this thing of the handicap parking lot, or they are in the bus or anywhere, they occupy those seats, then people ask them, you can't occupy that seat, that is meant for handicapped people. Many of them don't even understand when others are speaking to them, because they are deaf, or they have problems with speech of others. So that when it comes to solving the question papers, if you tweak the language a bit, the children who are linguistically challenged will not understand the questions. So the teachers have this, like, the task is so simple, even a child can do it, but you are a college student, you can't do it. Or this thing like, but you don't look sick. So disability is not a disease. Disability is not sickness. Disability is just a human diversity, and that is what we need to accept. And my submission to all the Board of Studies members is, do start Center for Disability Studies. We have Women Studies, the Cell for Women Studies, or a Department of Women Studies. But the UGC has been requesting so many universities and colleges to start Center for Disability Studies, and we don't have more than 6 to 7 all over the country, including University of Mumbai. The next slide. So, the plight of there are certain advantages and disadvantages when it comes to visible and invisible disabilities. So it's visible, as I said, the more profound this thing, there's immediate sympathy, there's priority, there's concession support. People will give them the way to do it, but then they don't accept them in the groups. The participation is, again, when it comes to sports, or when it comes to your cultural activities, they are hardly given a priority role. My submission there also is that when it comes to sympathy, sympathizing, that many, if you ask many persons with disabilities, they don't want that. They don't want facilities and concessions. They want equitable gesture. They want them to be treated very equally. The disadvantaged by visible disability is, they are marginalized. There's a pity bechara kind of a thing, and the labeling. We had a study of parents of atypical, meaning typical students whose schools have got children with disabilities, and they are, since they are an important stakeholders, we wanted to get their views on it. But many of the parents did accept this, that it's okay to have a child with disability in my child's classroom, but then I am not comfortable that my child shares his tiffin or his the bench in the classroom with a child with disabilities, because still they feel that disability is contagious. The next slide. So the RPWD Act, this is the Gazette notification, and I have purposely put it so that if you, and I have given it as a reading material also, please go through this act. In the annexures, they have listed out all the disabilities. And of course, the National Education Policy, I will tell what are the highlights for people with disabilities or the special educationally disadvantaged people in the policy. The next slide. So the RPWD Act of 2016, for whom it has listed about 21 disabilities, and these 21 disabilities includes even people with blood disorders, uh, thalassemia and hemoplegia and all, because these students miss out on their attendance part and also the learning part. So now in the COVID times, we have seen how the online working has really worked, and for home based education also, I think this was an eye opener, the pandemic. So what is the RPWD Act all about? It is more about creating accessibility. And the accessibility also, purposely I have put it in the picture, that when we think of accessibility, it's only the staircase and the ramp, but accessible textbooks, the digitally accessible textbooks, because even now the digital textbooks which are available of CBSE, they are not fully accessible to children with disabilities. The speech to text, text to speech, or other factors have to be taken into consideration. So basically it is the pedagogy which has to be inclusive when we want to really have an inclusive classroom. How is the question in RPWD Act? And it is like full participation and engagement, because engagement and participation are the two things which can really make a school or a college or an institute or a university inclusive. And whose responsibility it is of all, the central, state and the local authorities. The next slide. I have just put in the highlights of the RPWD Act, that it respects for the inherent dignity of persons with disability. It is based on UNCRPD, and UNCRPD is the United Nations Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, to which India is a signatory. So non-discrimination, full and effective participation, inclusive society, respect for differences, and this differences has to be an asset to the university or to the society. Disability as a part of human diversity, equality of opportunity, accessibility, gender equality, respect for capacity building, both of people with disabilities as well as the teachers and the trainers of people with disabilities. And what I really like is they have said about preserve the identities of people with disabilities. It is not just theory of normalization, not equalization, normalization, but it is preserving their identity. It is okay for somebody to use a hearing aid. It is okay for somebody to not see that well. It is okay for somebody to think differently. The next slide. So in what is that been covered in the national education policy, I've purposely put in the pictures because this is what the students have expressed in a university and a class, whether it is a class of sociology or it is a science or a class in commerce. They say their biggest hurdle in a class is not being able to follow the teachers lectures, conversations. So if your respective boards have, I'll come to UDL and then probably you will take home this message that if UDL is a way, or having an inclusive pedagogy is a way which benefits all. So at this particular juncture of time, I may not be very receptive in the evening. But if in an evening class, there is a stimulus variation like these, if you have some visuals and pictures, so probably those create a lasting impact, if not just the reading. So the issues really of higher education for people with disability is the enrollment rate and the pedagogy. So as I said, less than 1% of them have access to higher education, and that is not because people are not wanting to admit them, but it is basically because they don't reach to that qualifying levels of a university program. That is the whole thing. So many of the people who are deaf, their reading levels and language levels are so poor that I shouldn't use the word poor, but it's not age appropriate or grade appropriate language. But the ASAR report, if you see, even the typical children, they also do not read at the age and the grade level. So the foundations have not been to that level. So what provisions national education policy sees, and this we will see after 10 years, that the foundational literacy synergy across curriculum, across the grades, or making the curricular more flexible, or use of technology, or multilingualism. Somebody just pointed in the previous session that we need to have more and more regional based language, and that's going to help. Like even the Marathi, the way it is spoken in Vidarbha is different than the Marathi which is spoken in the Western Maharashtra or Mumbai, Pune. So if that is there, the same applies to even sign language. It varies across different regions. So multilingualism has been endorsed in the national education policy, and it is very big move for people with disabilities, and apart from the financial assistance. The next slide. The other issue has been equity, because as I said, diversity has not been recognized that well. There are labelings and there are stereotypes. So what are the great provisions that we have in the guiding principles of national education policies? They talk of experiential learning. More and more in our classrooms, when we train our trainees for the diverse classroom or for inclusive classroom, we use a lot of experiential learning. So if these kind of things are also taken across in all the autonomous colleges, I think the experiential learning benefits all students. It's not just persons with disabilities. When we talk of barrier free, it is the attitudinal barrier which is the most important barrier for the people, apart from pedagogy or evaluation or participation. So the programs on attitudinal barriers have been emphasized in the national education policy. Now, open and distant learning is also there, and so that's a very welcome move for people with disabilities. And counseling centers and center for special centers is what has been emphasized in the higher education sector of the national education policy. The next slide, which will talk about excellence. And the problem with what the issue really is the self-efficacy, because even if you may have noticed it that even a student who comes from a rural area, he lacks self-efficacy. They do not have the courage to stand and speak up in front of their faculty that I have not understood, madam, or this is what is the connectivity issue in our area, and we cannot do it. But there are lot. So how do we raise the bar, so from good, better to best? And I think the most important thing is the national education policy talks of the 21st century learning skills, and the model of 21st century skills has the 4 C's of creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So if we really practice these 4 C's, I think that's going to be the biggest help for people with disabilities. And the pedagogy and everything, the curricular practices that we are going to design, I'm sure each board of studies has that in its next goal. So if these things are really inbuilt, the provisions of national education policy, then our students with disabilities we will see more and more of them coming into higher education. There is so much of talents that these students have. They just have to be tapped. The Gitanjali Diamond, this thing has recruited most of their this thing are people with disabilities. So because they say the concentration is so good, they do not get distracted. So they have they have lot of talents. If you even see the wheelchair dancers, they nowadays go abroad and perform even international this thing. Dispositions is something which is mentioned in the national education policy, and which I think is a great eye opener for the teachers and faculty of the university also, because dispositions are urged to learn. So the urge has to be developed, whether for acceptability or for inclusive education. The urge to help each other is will really take the thing in its true spirit. So our goals is not equality, but it's the equity. So if we have to do the resource management of our colleges in autonomous institutions or the national other institutes, we have to do a proper resource management, which is who requires what. Like in the first picture, you see that everybody is given the equal stool, but it's not required by a tall student, and the one with wheelchair also has got no use of it. So equity is the mantra today, and along with inclusive education. So the resource management, when you are doing for people with disabilities, that has to be taken into account, that what is that we are offering them. The next slide. And this is what I really wanted to highlight and request you all to take this message along, because we have been talking of social justice, ability for people to participate, and it's there in our constitution, in our acts, everything. But as Maithili said, we need to have a socially just pedagogy. There's a difference between social justice and socially just pedagogy. That is what we saw in the previous slide. So if one really looks at the rhizomatic learning, I think it draws from the work of the socially just practices, from the work of Guattari and Deleuze, and that I have linked it to the universal design of learning. So the traditional approach followed by most of the institutions of higher education and colleges is the tree approach. Weeds we have given away because we have included people with disabilities, like even the people with intellectual disabilities and ASD, the autism spectrum disorders, are also part of higher education. So the weeds were something that were considered as not very significant, and they were taken off. But trees, as we said, that trees are the one way approach. But the UDL, which I'm going to share 2-3 slides after this, I feel that has a rhizomatic approach. And what is the rhizomatic learning is that the roots spreads everywhere horizontally as well as the shoots have vertically. So if the colleges and universities practice UDL, that do whatever works with the students will really help. So the learning without boundaries, or we have also heard about school without or colleges without walls, interconnectedness, and removing the hierarchy from every possible way from your institutions is actually the rhizomatic learning. And if in the previous speaker also talked about the scientist and all, I feel why can't we have the persons with this, and most of the scientists have been people with disabilities. So many of them had learning disabilities, but it's only the recognition that has to be given for their work, and also the motivation and the scaffolding which is required. So Vygotsky's this thing also of zone of proximal development, it talks about leveraging the what is the current this thing of functioning of the people. So boundless exploration is something which is the need of the day, and only then the children will be creative and critical thinkers, which is what the national education policy says. So from weeds we have moved to trees, and now we have to move to rhizomes. Now what is UDL? So we have been practicing about the norm, which is the golden rule. We take the root of average. So this is a small comic which tells that a boy says, our teacher has an interesting theory. She says, teaching is like bowling. So if you hit in the middle, everything will fall apart. So all you can do is roll the ball down in the middle and hope it touches all the students, and the balls will and the sticks will bow down, so get dropped. So the other one says she must be a terrible bowler. So it emphasizes that if you take the average route of teaching or examination, that's not going to help, because if you see the normative curve, we have on one side the gifted ones, one on the slow learners, but both of them remain marginalized if one takes the average route of teaching or evaluation in the classroom. The next slide. So what is the way forward? And the way forward is definitely the universal designs for learning. If you have read through it, then it is the multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, and the brain functioning and the networks of the brain. This is a proven pedagogy which is based on the approach of constructivistic theory. The next slide. So it's based on the premise that the way the fingerprints are different for each of us, that is the way the learning is different. And we nowadays do not talk of learning styles as a fixed entity. We talk of learning preferences. At times you may prefer auditory, at times you may prefer visual, at times you may prefer kinesthetic. So it is the learning preferences and the experience that you bring in. So there has been experiments to see whether the people with visual learners, they were shown a chessboard, and the others who were auditory learners were also shown the chessboard. But the auditory learners had experience and interest in chess, and the visual learners did not know anything of the chess, neither did they have interest. And after removing the chessboard, the visual of the chessboard, when both of them were asked, the ones with auditory learner could actually tell about the positions and which move could be taken. And that is only because that proves that the learning style may be auditory, but the experience and the interests are more important. So this is a statement by UNESCO that every learner matters and matters equally, and therefore the UDL is a the way forward, because UDL views learner variation. So it could be just not just auditory visual, but it could be somebody who is a print learner, somebody who is a more creative person who wants to learn by himself. The next slide. So there are three aspects and the concepts of UDL. It's the same way, the equality versus equity, but UDL is a method or a framework of instructions. Its foundation is on the equitable access to all. It focuses on building, and the main word there is the flexibility of learning environment. So it has more of project-based learning and more of experiential learning, giving a problem statement and asking the students to work on it using different medias and then coming it. The goal is to accommodate the academic needs and the learning styles or preferences and the cognitive styles. The next slide. So UDL has as I said, it's a brain-based research which has proved. So it is the affective recognition and the strategic network. So affective is the why of learning, recognition is the what of learning, and the strategic is the how of learning. And it has the next slide. It has both the vertical as well as the horizontal orientation. So it moves on from engagement, representation to action and expression. So if we provide multiple means of, in the classroom, so the students will access this according to their interests. So it has a horizontal as well as the vertical orientation. This is the UDL framework, which is a work by the CAST. So it moves on from access to build to internalize and to go, and the goal, that is the as the Maslow's hierarchical needs also progresses. So provide multiple means of representation in the class. So have auditory, visual, kinesthetic, or it could be also their own exploratory corner. So now, perception and comprehension, the students will choose by themselves what is that which is the preference. And so giving multiple means of representation will promote engagement in the class. And for evaluation also of learning, the action and expression says that provide options to the students for expressing, whether it's project making again, or writing an essay, or it could be composing a poem like how we saw in the previous session. When I have to teach people in simple ways what is UDL, I feel it is the cafeteria approach. You go to the cafeteria and the buffet lunch there, you can pick up whatever interests you and whatever is more palatable to you. So we have to give options to each and every student to take in his preferences, and I think then the learning happens best with the student. The next slide. So the UDL draws that if you remove the L part of the this thing, the universal designs, it started from the field of architecture, but it has a lot to learn for the field of education and learning. For example, equitable use. So you give them options of access. You can have stairs, you can have ramps, or you can have different ways. So even a flexible use like the left hand and the right hand, tolerance of error also inbuilt in our curriculum or in our assignments. Flexible use, you might have seen this now at the airports, or there are sensors which there is very low physical effort, and you can use those things, and it also doesn't waste the water. I'll come to the learning of it. The next slide. The other three principles is whatever you do, UDL says that use simple methods which are locally available. You don't have to use big gadgets. So it has to be simple and intuitive. It has to be perceptible. The person for whom you are making it has to have the meaning, use it for, should be visible. And the size and the space approach also has to be seen, and it has to be more and more flexible, that you step on it and it opens. So now when we add the L to it, the UDL, the next slide. So when in architecture it was used, they says one size, do one design which fits all people. But when we add the L to it, it's just the reverse. We say give options. One thing will not suit all. This is what is the UDL of architect, difference between architecture and learning. So the guiding principle of UDL is empower the students to have voices. Let them express, let them tell what is their mode of preference, whether they want visual learning, whether they want auditory learning. They let them choose the way we can give options. The teaching should be such that it should connect to the real life. So the examples which are given, whether in the textbooks or in while lecturing, if we connect the real life situation, the learning is more and more easier as well as fulfilling. The focus should be both on the process as well as outcomes, but not only on the outcomes. Build time to reflect and grow, and this is most important, I think, in today's time. So whenever we attend such programs also, we should go and reflect on ourselves, that what is that I can pick up from these 2 sessions today, and how I can make my university, my college, or my board a more inclusive board. Leverage technology, and what this is what has been in use in most of the things. So engage learners in multiple ways. So it is the theater, it is the sports, everything that can be taught, and everything that in which the people with disabilities can be included. Build capacity of teachers, and that's very, very important. So when we talk of experiential learning, I think even our faculty members should be open to such things of, going again back to school and learning things. It's no harm in doing that. I think I'm coming to the end of it. So I really like this story of making a difference, and this is my takeaway message. You can read it for yourself, but if the preschoolers, though I'm a head of the department, if you still ask me what is your passion, my passion is our laboratory in schools. We have started a cross disability early intervention center, and I really love teaching the young babies and the toddlers. So once this story, they say I am a great storyteller, and after my tenure in the National Institute, if somebody asks me what is that you want to do, Varsha, I would really want to be a storyteller to children, not just children with disabilities, but street children and the other children who have missed out on this important part of storytelling. So here's a story. An old man walked up a shore which was littered with thousands of starfish on the beach, and the storm had come, and there were many starfish on the beach, and he saw a young man who would pick up the starfish and throw it back or fling it back into the ocean. The sun was coming high on the head. It was noon. So the old man asked him, why are you bothering it? And you cannot save all of them. So why are you wasting your time? So the young man just picked up one starfish and he spinned it back into the ocean. And he said, that doesn't deter me. At least it will make a difference to this one, is what he replies, and he flings it into the ocean. So I feel that yes, I read something that the ICT based learning is very useful for everybody in the college or the university. So I feel even if we can make a difference to one person, one student's life or one person's life in our this thing, then that's the greatest award that one can get. So thank you very much, and thank you Maithili and the organizers and Sibyl Thomas, for giving me this opportunity, for including somebody from the field of inclusive education and special education into this August gathering. I hope you all take some message back and have more and more center for disabilities in your colleges and universities. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. A respected senior consultant of RUSA, Dr. Pramod Pabrekar, is also with us. If there are any questions that can come into chat box, you'd be happy, ma'am, to take those questions, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yes, apart from the appreciations for the talk, if there are any questions, the participants can write down in the chat box. It is 5:30 and we are due for one of the very interesting activities regarding POs and COs also. So participants should stay back for that activity. In fact, it is 5:30 only.
So there is a question by Vishali Datar, madam. She says, we talk so much about inclusionness, autism or learning disability, but are we really trained and able to teach them? That is a question.
So it's a question to ask. Each one has to think about how to build the capacities. But I would give a piece of information here that the B.Ed curriculum and the M.Ed curriculum of both NCT as well as RCI has introduced a paper on inclusive education. The Rehabilitation Council of India, that is the RCI, if you have heard it of, it's a statutory body under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which is responsible for the human resource development in the field of special and inclusive education. So that it's coming up with an idea of short certification programs for people already engaged in the field of education. So very soon you would be having these certificate programs which one could opt for, whether it is for learning disabilities or it is for sensory disabilities or any other disabilities that one is interested in it. But I won't say interested in it, but it is basically, we have also been all debating and discussing about different pedagogies for different disabilities, but now we have come to a level where it is teaching is good teaching, whether it is for people who are able-bodied or people who have certain disabilities, including the mental disabilities or emotional disabilities.
Ma'am, there is one more remark actually by Dr. Rita Ghoshal. She states that apart from requisite training, there isn't sufficient human capital in higher education for implementing such pedagogy many a times. So how do you look at it?
What? I have not read
There isn't sufficient human capital in higher education for implementing this kind of pedagogy that you talked about.
Yeah. So I would request that if you have short refresher courses or, you have your orientation programs, do start having some sessions on UDL practices or addressing disabilities. As I said, it's a human diversity and anybody can have it at any point of time. And that should not be deterring people from accessing or enrolling for higher education. So you can get in touch with any of the institutes who are, SNDT has a department of special education. We at the National Institute also, we conduct programs for faculty members as well as these things. So the sensitization program, at least to begin with it, the sensitization programs can be arranged.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess there are no more questions. There are some opinions. Apart from that, no more questions. Sybil, ma'am, how to go about it now? Because it's 5:38 and Maithili, ma'am. Yeah, yes, sir, please.
Sure. Good evening. Sorry to disturb. Let me really compliment Madam Varsha. Madam, it was very, very interesting to learn a lot from you. In fact, maybe that we will take up this issue of arranging the special lectures on UDL, or we will also write to, as in from RUSA, we will write to the HRDC. There are 5 HRDCs in the state of Maharashtra. I mean, start Mumbai University, Pune University, Nagpur, Aurangabad, Amravati. There are 6 centers. And for the information of you that we are also starting the Maharashtra State Faculty Development Academy. It's a fact that, teachers are not aware. As you rightly mentioned that, we know, but we are not aware totally how to go about it. So there should be some part, some kind of, as you said, a theme-based refresher course to be organized, especially on UDL, maybe 1 week program, short-term kind of program. We will take up and maybe, if possible, even RUSA will also organize a specially theme-based program on UDL. It's my request. I will be happy that a person like you, along with your team, Madam Sybil is always with us. But it was really good because I'm a part of NSS, National Service Scheme. I had done a lot of things in the state of Maharashtra. But then still I could, engage. I could learn a lot from you, or your session rather. So let us try to do something better, and how teachers can be oriented, trained in regard to especially to train this kind of all type of diversity of the people, and how to involve them or to include. It was a very interesting. You have rightly pointed out the difference between equality and equity. A very simple slide has given a lot of things.
Yes.
So thank you, madam. Thank you very much for all things, and I think we will be connected to you, and we will be expecting a lot of support from you in this regard. Thank you, Madam Varsha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Sir, shall we move ahead with the exercise that Dr. Maithili ma'am and Sybil ma'am has planned?
Yes, please continue.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Sybil ma'am.
Yes. With your permission, can I sign out?
Yes. Madam, then I would prefer that Professor Garje, he would propose vote of thanks. May I now request Professor P.M. Garje to propose formal vote of thanks. Right. Thank you.
Madam Varsha, I'm sorry. Can I have your cell number from anybody with Sybil madam? You have.
Yeah, I have it. I'll forward it.
Okay, please forward. Thank you, madam.
Yeah.
I'll try to connect to you, madam.
Yeah, I will put my email also in the chat box. So if anybody.
That's right. That's good. You are based in Mumbai or Nagpur, madam?
Mumbai. She's a neighbor at Bandra.
And then
I'm from Nagpur, meaning born and brought up in Nagpur, but for last 30 years in Mumbai.
You are attached to which institute, you said?
The government, it's a government of India's institute under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. So it's National Institute for Speech and Hearing Disabilities.
Okay, madam. Nice. It was nice interacting. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Garja sir, you may proceed.
On behalf of Sangamner College, I would like to thank today's eminent personality, Professor Maithili Ramchandran, Center of Excellence in Teachers Education, TISS Mumbai. I would like to thank Shugra Chunawala, Dean and Professor of HBCSE Mumbai, for their valuable guidance. I would like to thank Dr. Varsha Ghatu, ma'am, Reader and HOD of Ali Awarjang National Institute. I also thank to our principal, Professor Arun Gaikwad sir. I also thanks to Pramod Pambrekar sir, Dr. Vijay Joshi sir, and Professor Sybil Thomas ma'am. I also thanks to Vice Principal, Dr. Ladda sir, Dr. Tashildar sir, the IQC coordinator, Mr. Pingre sir.
Garja sir, right, we'll do it for the valedictory session tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Sybil ma'am, over to you, please.
Okay, friends, yesterday we had promised that we would look at an example of how we are going to map the CO, POs and the assessment strategies. And we had called for volunteers. Due to lack of time, we would take one of the presentation of a college. And I think the Ferguson College had submitted in yesterday first. So could I request them to present? Based on this example, we would then wind up and give discuss a template that can be best used. Yeah. So over to Pingle sir to call on the presenter.
Yeah, there were two people from Ferguson College who volunteered, Dr. Poonam Deshpande and Dr. Ishita. I have allowed screen sharing. If any one of them can come in, I guess Dr. Shabib, he talked about what he feels yesterday. So I thought we will give opportunity to others as well. So Poonam ma'am, if you can come in. You're unmuted, Poonam ma'am. But you are not audible maybe.
Yeah, and also screen share, Pingle sir.
Yes, ma'am. Poonam ma'am, can you hear us? Yeah, she has started the screen share. The only thing is we cannot hear you, madam, as of now. If you can hear us, if you can respond, please.
Put it on chat box, Srihari. Srihari.
Wrote it in the chat box.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if Ishita is there, just tell her to call her and accordingly she can do that.
Right.
Because we do not, I mean, hope you have Ishita's number or whatever you can do.
Ishita ma'am, can you come in, please?
Yes, sir. I will. I was just trying to connect with Poonam ma'am and
Yeah,
see.
yeah. Please call over the phone and tell her.
She has very nicely shared the work that she has done. Only thing is, it will be appreciated if she can speak a bit about it.
Yes.
Yes, really. Sibyl ma'am, Maithili ma'am has shared.
Can we continue?
Yes.
Then maybe as Poonam comes in, so probably then we'll reverse the order. I'll probably share a template and an idea, and then probably ask them to present.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So can I start the screen share? They'll have to stop, but the screen share.
Ma'am, you can actually. I'll allow multiple screen sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible.
Ma'am, you can please.
Yeah.
You are sharing the one which was sent by Maithili.
Yeah. Can you take Maithili and second last slide with the template?
Just a moment, ma'am. She had just shared a PPT on mapping of POCs, right?
Correct,
that one.
Correct.
Yes.
In a second now.
Okay.
Wait. Is it the one, ma'am?
Yes. Can we?
All right.
So I'll begin.
All right, ma'am.
Okay. Can we enlarge the view?
Yes, sure.
Pingle sir, just view enlarge that. Okay,
yes.
Friends. So so far we're just taking you an exemplar. So supposing we wanted to teach a unit by the name, and I'm very happy to see that the 3 participants who did submit were along these lines as well. So I would just be reinforcing what you all are already doing as your best practice. So look at this. If you have a unit, your unit could be whatever, like I have taken a unit called as Education and Introduction. The main objective of this unit is to introduce the broad aims of education and processes of schooling. Yes, so this is what is my broad objective. How am I going to do this objective? I would use activities such as, to begin with, watching a video or a film. I have even put down the film that we are giving for a short view. This film is called Do Flowers Fly? And it actually brings out the whole essence of schooling and how multiple perspectives operate in schooling. So this is an exercise of school visioning and their own schooling, for visioning their own school experiences. Yeah. So we have put objective, unit is 1. Objective is 1.1. In the objective 1.1, I would have, for teaching this, multiple, multiple ways of teaching or different experiences that I would provide. It could be a film that I'm showing to introduce the unit, followed by a discussion and based on a reading that has been provided by me. Then an activity that I would be giving to the students, that is to prepare a collage where they are based on the ideas emerging from the film. Yeah, so these are the student activities listed, the kind of experiences that I'm providing. I list this down in this grid, followed by, now, therefore, how am I going to assess this learning? Okay, is it now, though, if you notice over here, it's no lecture, it is just reading and activities to the students. And therefore, I have with me, or every institute can have their own rubric for discussions. Yeah, for a particular subject you could have. So basically, based on participation in the discussion, based on a rating scale, at what level at which the students are discussing. Are they only reporting facts? Are they critically viewing that film from the lens of, like as we have just learned today, from the lens of social justice? Are they able to see diversities in learning experiences? Are they able to look at challenges that are there in the current education system and how they are able to view and suggest ways to overcome them? So these are ways in which I can even use a discussion as a marked measurable activity. Yeah. Then following which, it is preparation of a collage based again on a rating scale. A collage can be evaluated. You could use either a rating scale or you could use a rubric for that purpose. So friends, before we begin our teaching and instruction, we create this kind of a table. Now, this is only one A part of a unit. So this is real hard work, and that's why NAC, I think, wants each one of us to plan this very minutely before we enter into classroom discussions. So this is unit A. Then following which I will have 2. So the second part could be probably of social agents in education that I want to talk about. Therefore, following which I will have objectives for the social. Now, these objectives that we are writing next to the unit will be the corresponding with the course objectives. Okay. Now, when I'm preparing a plan, we usually prepare it in this tabular manner, unit by unit. But when I'm writing this, I will look at this and show, if you want, below this point where you are seeing over here, to introduce the broad aims of education, will correspond to my curriculums. I could write here corresponding to a curriculum objective, and I could put the curriculum objective 1. Now let's go back. Curriculum objectives come from policy. Curriculum objectives come from vision statements of your college, vision and mission statements. 3, so I said policy, I said vision, mission statements of your college, and 3, your discipline objectives. For us, we would go through documents by NCTE. We would go through I'm putting it off because I get a signal that internet is poor on my side. So we would go through the vision mission documents given by the NCTE, since it's a regulatory authority under which we come. I do understand for UGC, colleges who come under purview directly of UGC, you would have different committees, commissions, etc. for your subject, for your subject specification. So I would write the overall curriculum objectives from there. I then move on to understand the program objectives. Program is BSc program, BA program, BEd program, BArch program, BMM, etc. would be the objectives of that particular program comes under the program objectives. After which I will write course-wise objectives. For example, for us, a course where we would introduce them to the concept of education would be philosophical and sociological basis of education is the name of our course. In that course, we have units. And therefore, in the grid, what I am putting, if you want, we can go ahead based on your creativity. You can write 1.1 corresponds to objective 1 of the PO. Objective 2 of the C, curriculum objective. Okay? And therefore, to realize that curriculum objective and that PO objective, what I am doing is, I am writing now a major objective of the unit. So each time I write my unit objective, I look up to the program and my course objective. Now, I don't remember if you can recall in the first sessions for principles of curriculum development, there I had mentioned, I given an objective that the Justice Verma Commission report had said teachers should have these quality. They should be able to critically engage with textbooks. They should be able to engage with children and develop the love for learning. And therefore, what I am doing is, this was my curriculum objective, which I got from the Justice Verma. I am mapping this concept or this content of education and introduction, where I want them to introduce to the broad aims of education is in alignment with curriculum objective number 1, program objective number 3. It could be even more than that. Curriculum objective 1, 2, 3. Program objective 2 and 4, 1 and 3. You know, it goes varying. But suggested activities have to be evolved following each unit description. Yeah, and then assessment. So assessment, I want you to recall yesterday and right through we were talking different modes of assessment. So we will list and use a variety of assessment practices in this. For example, a field visit can be an assessment technique. You could have a field visit here, you could have internship here, you could have in terms of a project here, you could have in terms of collage making, you could have in terms of a group work, group discussion, you could talk about them recording or their e-portfolios that they are creating also could be an activity and a corresponding assessment practice. Okay, so this is how I think the relationship, I hope I am able to now with a concrete example, and I've seen that this is in alignment with what you all are attempting to do at different colleges. So I would now, if possible, request the Ferguson College course thing to be put up.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible now?
Yes, so you are audible. And
I rejoined. I think there was some technical issue. So I will just share my screen.
Yeah.
And you know, but it was good that Sibyl ma'am has explained many things and I have learned, but what we are doing, I just let all of you to just go through that. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yeah, the screen is visible.
I have done 2 screen sharing. Okay, so what we are doing actually, the Sibyl ma'am has told, and it is the thing which we can think of, but what we are doing is now, we are following, you know, first how to write the course outcome by using this revised Bloom's taxonomy. So as you know all, yesterday there was a session that from remembering, understanding, application, analysis, evaluate to create we have to take. And there are a measurable verb which we have to use, because we have to take these course outcome towards the attainment process. So for attainment process, we should know that we have to use some measurable outcome. Let's say the first level is, which I am using, or first course outcome, I should say. First, we have decided in Ferguson how many course outcome we should have. So we have referred NAC manual, which says that for a 4-credit course, you can have 6 plus minus 2 COs. So we thought, let's decide for 6 COs. And then let's say my topic is molecular biology. I teach, then there is a code and number of credit and description. Along we have a 3 rows. One is COs, that is course outcome, then description and Bloom's level. Now, first I have written, like, describe the general property of viral, prokaryotic, eukaryotic genome and identify structural organization. So if you can see the blue highlighted verbs, these are the verbs which we can measure at the end of the examination. Okay, we can ask that, yes, if students are really able to, after teaching one particular topic, if they really are able to identify what are the organization of eukaryotic chromosome, then that means that person is really able to attain this course outcome CO1. Likewise, if you see, I have used explain, identify, give examples. All of them I have mapped to the Bloom's taxonomy level. Like, you know, this 1 and 4, I can tell you, describe is 1, and this identify is in 3 levels actually. It is in first level also remembering, and then second, the 4th level also analysis. So it is my understanding that what type of questions I will be asking. Okay, so as this is the first year, what we have told teachers to keep this level portion open. Maybe while writing my first course outcome, I may think of, okay, there can be other questions, maybe application based question, which can come out of this. So to ease this, we have removed the stringency of following 1-4 or 1-4 like we have for CO2 or 5-3 fun. Only thing that this will make teachers realize, okay, how to use Bloom taxonomy. Like compare different mechanism of DNA repair and give example of disease related to their defect in mechanism. Then illustrate the process of this recombination as a process and identify role of protein. So this is from different level, you know, we are taking them from level 1 to and level 5 also. The more challenge which our teacher faced, and we had a lot of discussion over the, 5th and 6th level. So we explain them, you can take that student to that level. Can you ask that one question from that, or your course outcome, don't you think it should be justify the role of enzymes and protein? Why this particular enzyme is used? Why not other? Why DNA polymerase is used for, replication? Why not RNA polymerase? So can student justify the role of enzyme and proteins involved in these processes? And, whether they can illustrate some of the mechanism. It's a kind of mind mapping also. They can, one word I have learned during this FDP, I will definitely use in this creation portion. So more problem was then how to include 6, as I have told. So then we have discussed, people thought there was a stringency in people's mind. They thought, madam, creation is something, invent something new. How can our children invent something new? So what I told them, new or some new, it is good that our student can invent some new design or some, create some law. But what our perspective was, which you can definitely help us to understand, that can they design a mechanism that how one drug can inhibit one particular process, at which level it will be going to work on. So that means they can prepare a map, they can prepare a system, they can write a hypothesis, they can also design a particular project, that how this particular drug will act at what particular molecular mechanism. So in this way we can take them to creation level. So this is what we have discussed. And then one practical, which you can help me in understanding if it is correct or not. So what we have thought, let's include all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy in practicals also. So we have taken this one example of enzymology and biophysical technique we have. So can student describe the principal mechanism and role of reagents used in these experiments? And can they, they should be able to, because it's a course outcome. So they should be able to perform these techniques, isolation, purification. And also they can plan that how the temperature will affect the enzyme activity, how the pH will affect the enzyme activity. Various things they should be able to plan. Then they should be able to compute also some solution, some, how to make the 2.5 normal solution or, 1.7 molar solution. They should be able to do then they should be able to explain and demonstrate the separation technique, electrophoresis, chromatography, and then carry out the experiment by using the spectrophotometer. In order to, this was very important, what they should be able to just not to take and observe the OD, but prepare standard curve by using absorbance definitely, and calculate. We have given one of the objective in our program that they have to calculate molar extinction coefficient. And then last we have kept, can they design an experiment on their own? Like I have given an example. Can they find out enzyme activity at different temperature on their own? So can they prepare a chart, or can they prepare observation table, and even the how they will go to that, so they can plan an experiment, design an experiment, interpret it, tabulate, and conclude these results. So this is our first year, in last 2 months only we are working on this. So this is how we have understood. So I would really like to have, ma'am's comment on
I think it's excellently done. Only now probably you all could expand to say how, like through this, what are your outcomes in terms of the evaluation patterns that they would use, that you would use to realize these objectives.
Okay, so I am just sharing another screen. Can you see, ma'am?
Yeah. No, I could see this thing.
Oh, I should then stop and then again share. So this is just an initiative, and definitely this is the best platform I can, ask for the help. Okay, yes. So this was the question, because as I've told that many teachers were not comfortable how to do this and how to proceed. So we started with giving this idea to teacher. Let's start with forming a question bank. Okay, all have question banks. So what you should do, you should write question from which level it belongs to in terms of CO and Bloom's level, and what are the marks. So these are the few examples which I have given to faculty during an presentation, because some faculty, they understood, as one of the lecture was there on like 20% they support it, 60% wait for the change, and 20% they oppose. So I gave example. Yes, these simple lower level was easy. This is lower level were calculate, list, and identify part of cell. It was the low, provide an example, discuss transport, and then also prediction is also in lower level. Prediction, what happened to X if Y increases? So we should give this type of question, and we should have a mapping. We should make a question paper, so that question number, the description of question, and the level and course outcome should be there. So can they describe the assumption of one law and and its use as a hypothesis? Can they make one chart, or can they develop a hypothesis? And can they there is some subject related question, so I am not more keen on reading, but then we made all the teachers, please make us, we have to start from first one by one steps, because it's a very different atmosphere in higher education institute, unlike the technical like engineering colleges. So we told, okay, you just start. Okay, discuss the merits of using one technique versus the another technique. So this is just analysis, and assess the differences between linguistic determination, linguistic relativity, evaluate the feature, compare and contrast the focus of linguistic. So I have just kept few some arts and science question to cater to the audience, and then design an experiment using, there is one technique. Okay, so design an experiment using this technique to test the hypothesis that transcription factor A really regulate expression of another factor. So can your student really design this type of experiment with the knowledge, with the courses which are with the kind of lectures we are taking, and what deliverable we are having for them? So this was the second step, and I mean last week only we have sent this 2-3 days ago only we have sent this notice. So please start. And then we have also told that you should have one more system that mark what internal exam, whatever you are taking. Let's say some people think creation we cannot take in end semester exam. We can't let our children write. I don't know how they will write create something. So we kept it open. Okay, let us take in internal exam. Okay, let's 6, you can give some project, you can give some paper reading, you can give some poster they can design. So you map this with your CO, keep a record with you, and then you can really analyze that which type of cognition level you have really given to them, the students. So just towards the attainment, it's a really very big process, and we are slowly going. So first we have told them this. So I have that one particular notice also. If you just allow me, I will quickly share that how you can, how we have kind of disseminated these kind of things. So I will just quickly share that thing that how, let me just take, meanwhile you can share, ma'am, your...
I think it's an excellent presentation, and even the subsequent one, 3 others who sent to us last night also, and this morning 2 were sent, were also very well. Only thing I think what would be more holistically helpful if you have all 4 components at the before the academic year in place, and use your creativity how to represent. You may not be able to represent per CO a corresponding assessment, but you could say in this assessment through internal assessment will cater to CO 1, 2 and 3. Yeah. Okay.
So can you see this? So
yes,
this was just one map. What we have told, what we follow in Ferguson, we have 2 internal exam. One is CE1, we have given the name, and CE2. And then there is an end semester exam. So we take CE2 compulsory as multiple choice question through our ERP system. Okay, and then CE1, we have a flexibility. Okay, we can, this is of 25 marks. So what we tell teachers to take it into 2 different types. One is for 15 and another for 10. So anything they can take, assignment, written test, quiz, seminar, group discussion, anything. Only thing we have told them, please map this with course outcome. Okay, let's say one is you have taken test, let's say 15 mark, anything, assignment or whatever. You have to write it is belonging to CO 1, 2 or 4. 2, 3 question you have given, and which question, this question is mapping to which course outcome. So teacher have to keep a record of that. And even the second CE1 topic, whatever they will give. So example I have given, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 and 3, 4, 5, 6. And online, then I have told whatever syllabus you have covered till that particular internal exam based on CO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or how much syllabus has been covered, you have to prepare this online MCQs. And we have a column in that MCQs that we have to put which CO level is there and which level of cognition is there, right, from remembering to the creation. So I have told them that please prepare MCQ from each unit specifying their mapping with COs and revised Bloom taxonomy. I know it was a kind of very bahut halchal ho gaya tha college mein, and in fact I also have to work hard, but then let's say we have to take teachers and we have to hold their hand and slowly take them toward the new thing, and which I think with this measure we are able to do, like this we have given, prepare all these things. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you, ma'am. I'm just stopping.
Wonderful and excellent presentation, madam. And it just shows that, see, it is also I think it would have been progressive, it would have been hard, but it is also your own creativity. Now, for example, it may be at Sangamner, you may use this, plus you may think somewhere else I can add another column, another creative way of expressing, this whole map. But I think congratulations, and what I'm getting a feeling, if correct me if I'm right, that I think even writing objectives for this group, which would have to be strengthened a little bit more as to how does one begin to imagine moving from level 1 to the ultimate creation objective. And as we suggested, don't restrict to Benjamin Bloom, even think of objectives related to self, objectives related to society, those kind of self-evolution of an individual student in your objectives. So I think what at college level, individual level, we begin first with writing the action verbs. If you want, we can give you a sheet of these action verbs. If you are not available, it's not available, at least a link of that, where per domain, what are the action verbs?
Yeah, it is available on Google.
Yeah, correct. So that will be, I think, point number 1, to familiarize yourself. Secondly, how does one write it in the form of an objective?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just, I just wanted to help my all dear colleagues, because I was discussing last time that I really struggled for 1 month to understand PO, PSO, right from PEO, PO, PSO, and then CO. So what knowledge I got, I think I should, I will take just 2 minutes, because it's a requirement from NAC that now we have to write all these things. And if you see the UGC manual, they are using something other word, like, people were confused. What is PLO? UGC is writing PLO likhna hai, madam, ab NAC bol raha hai PSO. So what our understanding was, that I wanted to share. So we are a science and arts college, Ferguson. So programs are like, BA, MA, BSc, MSc, and BVO. So 5 program outcome we have written, which is a program, MA program outcome, BA program outcome, and 80% are same. They are based on critical thinking. We want to, take our student research related skill, transdisciplinary, whatever. Only 20% difference was there between arts and science. And then a little difference between UG and PG, how the outcomes of a postgraduate course is different. So 5 POs we have written, and then comes the program specific outcome. So like a BA program or BSc program has different, departments like chemistry. So program specific outcome for chemistry, program specific outcome for maths. So likewise, every department have written their program specific outcome. And then we have taken them towards the course outcome. And then we have, I don't know why, but we have kept little bit kind of approach that program specific outcome should be such that it should not be broad, it should not be too much. So only 4 we have decided, which can really cover many of the things. So one was, based on, first we have given disciplinary competency, academic competency. That means whatever course outcome is having, it should satisfy the program specific outcome. Okay, so second was research related research competence. Third was personal and professional competence. Personally, what student is able to gain through that course. He or she might not be going for a professional, outcome of that, or be it at home. So what is the personal competence that person is getting? And the last one was social and entrepreneur competence. Social competence means even, I want, if my any child is not going to any job, but he should have listening skill, he should have communication skill, he should be able to interact with the society and all. So social competence and the entrepreneur, because as we are all into Make in India and everything, so we should think from that level. So only 4 we have kept as a PSOs, and then 8 program specific outcomes. So later on, now the big question is mapping your COs, okay, with your program specific outcome. So it is a big task, and it depends on teachers, how they really will think that it is of lower level, it is medium, or a higher. We have kept 1, 2, 3 as a number. First to low level mapping is there, or medium, or so this CO, PO, and PSO mapping is at teacher level. The problematic thing I think is there, which is a CO attainment. So that is related with the assessment. I think all here colleges are there, they can reach up to mapping of course outcome with the PO and PSO. That will be easily done. And then mapping of PEO, that is program educational objective, with the mission of the college. I think that 2-step is a teacher till the teacher's level, and they can do. Attainment ke liye, I think it will need more time for all of us to adjust. Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And
thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Poonam, ma'am.
And congratulations, Poonam, madam, for this excellent clarity and way in which you could express yourself. I wish we had time for the other 2 syllabi as well, but unfortunately that we are running out of time. But with this basic idea of how we progress and how it is possible, I think you also saw yesterday which I showed you was the UGC manual. And as Poonam ma'am did point out that terminology wise, there is a little difference here and there, but nevertheless, the basics is what we told you. This is how it should be, and this is how constantly be aware of the linkages between the 2. So we will try and see if I'll talk to Dr. Pingle and Jyoti as well, if we can put these on a Word document, these snapshots of the pictures, and make it available in your Google file. The one we presented, the one from the UGC grid, which they are giving, as well as, if Poonam ma'am's due permission, maybe a snapshot of Dr. Poonam's as well, to put it as on a Word and make it available to you all. Yeah, so this is what I think so far now we have attained. And as usual, I think we are running out of time, Dr. Pingle. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. There were a few more people who wanted to speak and elaborate more on this, but Poonam ma'am has really done the job well. And Pabrekar sir would be happy to see that the participants and resource person coming to the same level and discussing things, learning from each other. And then most importantly, all autonomous colleges coming together, taking efforts to solve their problems, collaborating, networking. That's really wonderful. That's probably the best outcome of this FDP that we are having. I would like to, yes, sir. I would like to inform all the participants. In fact, we have been mailing them every day that there is a folder that has been shared with all of them. And that folder we keep on updating. So like Professor Sybil Thomas ma'am said, we will update the snapshots of these outcomes and objectives also in the folder, and they can definitely enjoy the benefits of these. And over the time, we'll continue to update the folder also. I would
Yes, sir. Even the other two sirs who sent, one sir and another madam who sent it, you ask their permission. I think circulating word as it is may not be right without their principal's permission. So at least only a picture, a snapshot for memory, if they allow us with their due permission, we can copy the picture on a word and then give it.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
This is actually the college property in many ways. So we'll try and look at that. And if that is of some help, I am sure we would reach somewhere.
Yeah, Poonam madam has given kind of consent, but I'll interact with her personally and get the thing sorted out. Just a reminder, tomorrow is the last day of this FDP. I would not say last day because there are some exercise coming up even after, the FDP ends, and there has to be a model curriculum that needs to be developed. Just now I have shared in the folder the template for the curriculum development few minutes back. So you need to go to that folder and see, look for that template. And do we need to explain, Sybil madam, right now?
Yes, we'll take tomorrow before we begin or towards the end, 5 minutes.
Yes.
I think not towards the end. In the beginning, we'll just take 5 minutes. So, but you read the template first. So if any specific question, and in 5 minutes, we'll explain the template. You will see it's a culmination of all that we did, right from introduction, objectives of like this, how do you write objectives? What is the content, methodology? So if you manage to fill that all, it will be some representation of what a curriculum document looks like for you all.
Thank you very much. And tomorrow is the valedictory function, and Honorable Vice Chancellor of Savitribai Phule Pune University, Professor Karmarkar, sir, he will be here as the chief guest for the valedictory function. So kindly take note of it. There are participants who are requesting for the recording of today's session. Dear participants, all the sessions have been streamed live on YouTube. So you can definitely go to our YouTube channel, Sangamner College Official, and take the benefit of these videos. With the permission of Honorable Principal and our Senior Consultant Pabrekar sir, Sybil ma'am, and Maithili madam, and all the resource persons, shall I declare it an end of the today's session?
And ask everybody to join tomorrow before time.
Yes.
Right, and request every participant that till the entire last resource person doesn't leave, we will not leave the right. They should be there for till the end.
Yes.
And I think you have made the announcement of that we will be giving them the homework. They have to submit the one
model curriculum.
Model curriculum. Maybe from one college, one curriculum. Right?
Yes.
And then we will be able to evaluate that. So that will be a good kind of thing. And we also are having an idea of having an e-book kind of presentation, right? As an outcome of this FDP. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So how to go about it, that we will discuss later. But then they all resource persons should give the material, and even the participants review. I mean, whatever, like for example, Dr. Poonam, who has done a good kind of work. Even some of, if Madam Sybil can identify such kind of persons, they can, we can ask them to write separately so that we can include that in an e-book. It will be an e-book publication, will be done by RUSA jointly with the Sangamner College. Okay?
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'll end the meeting with the permission of all the dignitaries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.